Alright, lock in because today we have the second installment of rating every episode of the Beyblade Metal Fight Saga. This part focusing on Beyblade Metal Masters. Same rules apply as in the first video. These are episode ratings, episode grades, rather than rankings because it's easier that way. Arc names are based on the arcs that Wildfang edits names, so go check him out. He makes some good Beyblade videos. Also, this might not end up working out completely like how I want it to, but you'll notice that this video is shorter than the Fusion video. I'm going to go lighter on the recaps because at the end of the day, I'm not here to recap and explain each and every single detail of the episode. Like, stuff will be left out if it doesn't matter much, or like I just flat out don't have anything to say about it. I just want to say what I thought about the episodes. Now, that takes context that'll have to be explained, but at the end of the day, all of these episodes are out there on YouTube as of right now. So yeah, rather than recap something that's already out there, I just want to add my own thoughts to it. So yeah, now that we've established everything, time to get in here. Let's go. Episode 1, Seeking the Legend. It's the start of Beyblade Metal Masters and the Selection Tournament arc. Even though the Selection Tournament doesn't start until episode 4, I'll just include these episodes, or I call it the Seeking the Legend mini arc within the Selection Tournament arc. In this episode, we get to see what Japan looks like post the El Drago crisis, after Digya defeated El Drago and protected the future of every blader. We see that Digya's left without a Beyblade, his Storm Pegasus, prompting him to go on a journey to Coma Village to retrieve his new Beyblade, Galaxy Pegasus, the legendary Beyblade. Hikaru essentially retired from Beyblade and has taken a managerial higher up role with Ryu in the new WBBA that's focused on providing fair and honest battles and not giving power to organizations like the Dark Nebula that lead bladers down the wrong path. I guess that means that they're going to have to put some restrictions on that wish after winning the survival battle, as that's a big part of what really got the El Drago crisis going. And then there's a newcomer in town, Masamune Kadoya, the #1 blader. I'm sure that won't get old. Not only is he going to go around spamming that, he's interrupting this tournament battle with Tsubasa and Yu, acting like he owns the world. Good thing Tsubasa shut down his request to battle because of his lack of manners. But before challenging Digya to a battle at the end of this episode, we see that he can somewhat back up that claim. We see that he has quite a bit of skill with his Ray Striker being a very fast Beyblade, causing trouble for Yu, a top 8 blader in Metal Fusion, even finding a way to stop Libra's Inferno Blast from starting up. So maybe this guy is legit. All of this adds up to a premiere that knows exactly what its job is: to give a reintroduction to the world and tease conflicts without overloading on battles after the intensity of what we just came off of in Fusion. It's a table setting episode. It's like very introductory in terms of what it's going for. It leaves me eager for more rather than just like shocked. So it's a B tier episode. Let's save the A tier grades for something that's like a really great episode. This was a fine episode. Episode 2, The Persistent Challenger. This episode is all about the persistent challenger, Masamune. He keeps on challenging Digya to battles so he can claim his status as the #1 blader. However, despite Digya's Galaxy Pegasus not being fully mastered, he's still able to beat Masamune on multiple occasions because it just has so much raw power. So this episode was about two things. Masamune gradually learns Digya's strategy and the moves of Pegasus and becomes stronger after every battle, to the point where he actually beat Digya in a bit of a cheap win, but a win is a win is a win. And like I said, he was putting in work, so I'll give it to him. It's not like an Osamu type of victory. And remember, in Fusion, Digya said that the next time he loses will be the time he quits Beyblade. So shouldn't Masamune have just put him into retirement right now? So they have the Masamune plot. Then there's Digya not controlling Galaxy Pegasus. No, that was his mistake. That's selfish. He has to become one with Galaxy Pegasus, which eventually happened by the end of this episode because of his loss to Masamune, making him realize that he and Pegasus have to work together. They have to work with one heart and mind, just like Masamune and his Ray Striker. I'm going to give this episode a B, similar to my reasoning for why I gave the previous episode a B. The battles weren't all that entertaining because Masamune kept on getting dog walked, but I like the themes at play, especially with Digya becoming one with Pegasus instead of selfishly trying to control it. Also, it was a funny episode with everyone mocking Masamune and him always saying "what?", which I noticed he stopped saying that as the season went along. However, I know the best is yet to come. There's going to be some more intense battles, so this is going to get a B grade. Episode 3, A New Challenge. This episode raises the stakes as we get our first real glimpse of the upcoming Beyblade World Championships and a peek at Team Wang Huzhong from China. One of their members was stalking them in the previous episode, but they finally got their proper introduction here. Chiyun Li, side note, like until very recently, like maybe a year ago, I always thought that he was a girl. But yeah, he and Mei Mei lured Digya into like what turned into a tag team battle at a Chinese restaurant. Masamune just had to get in there. What makes this fight so interesting is how it flipped the script on raw power. On paper, Digya and Masamune should dominate, as Mei Mei's Aquario is clearly the weaker link, and they could have like targeted her early on for an easy knockout. But their non-stop bickering and ego clashing, which seems a bit out of character for Digya, but like it sells the rivalry. But yeah, they themselves turn this match into an uphill struggle. The Chinese team isn't so much stronger than them. However, their coordination, smart positioning, and combo attacks maximized the tag team format and kept our heroes on the back foot for most of this battle. It's a perfect demonstration that great teamwork can neutralize individual talent. Digya and Masamune won once they like dropped the "I'm better" nonsense and landed a combined full power attack, but it's not the most inspiring victory as they only beat the substitute, Mei Mei, despite going at Chiyun's Lacerda. If Japan's top bladers are already exposing their glaring teamwork flaws against a scouting pair, not even China's full reps, the actual world tournament is gonna look brutal. I'm gonna give this episode an A. We've seen tag elements before in the survival battle and the battle royal, but like here, the format finally gets a chance to shine, like it's fully realized here. I like it because it levels the playing field and like it gives weaker bladers real strategic impact. Also, this episode, this battle format smartly planted a clear weakness for Digya and Masamune to overcome. Episode 4, Ticket to the World. In this episode, the selection tournament begins for Japan's World Championship team. Because Digya already won Battle Bladers, he already has a spot on the team, which he was upset to hear about because like he wanted to battle with his new Galaxy Pegasus. However, with him out of the spotlight, we get to focus on other bladers, like Masamune versus Yu. He wanted to get Mr. Budinsky back for interrupting his battle with Tsubasa. They were able to battle because like they were 2 of the 4 that made it past the qualifying round, along with Tsubasa and Kyoya. In Yu and Mr. Budinsky's battle, it started out similarly to how it was in the first match, until Yu tapped into what made him the boy genius and read Striker's movements and was able to counter and get it stuck in sand so it couldn't stop Inferno Blast like last time. However, Masamune was able to defeat this Inferno Blast with a 1-point breakthrough and his special move, Lightning Sword Flash, which I keep on saying I'm not the biggest Yu lover, but this never really made sense. Like it doesn't quite work for me. Libra's special move is made out to be this formidable Inferno Blast that if touched, it's a sleep out or a stadium out. Whenever it's been countered or taken down, there's always been like a bit of strategy behind it, like Tsubasa canceling out the shockwaves with shockwaves of his own, or Digya developing a new special move to take down the Inferno Blast before making contact, or Reiji breaking Libra because he probably doesn't have anything in his arsenal that can take down the Inferno Blast, like not even his dark move possibly. Even Hyoma, while not beating Yu, he brought him to a stadium where he thought that Yu couldn't use his Inferno Blast. So you see, you need the right strategy to beat this move or like stop it from even happening in the first place. All of those times that the Inferno Blast was beaten, it made strategic sense, but this time seeing it get beaten by brute force, brute string, that opens up the doors for someone like maybe Benkei and his Maximum Stampede special move to beat it. It seems like now there's no strategy to it and anyone can beat it as long as their Beyblade has equal or more strength than Masamune's Ray Striker, which is probably going to be like everyone or like a good majority of bladers in this season because of power creeping. Masters characters are typically stronger than fusion characters for the most part. And I'll say this right here, Yu doesn't get much stronger in this season. I like that they're balancing out Inferno Blast because it is OP. You can't be at the top forever, especially since we need to focus on Masamune and some other bladers that will meet in the future. However, the way that it got beat here doesn't really make sense for what it was established to be. Anyways, because of this, Masamune punched his ticket to the World Championships, and we'll see the results of Tsubasa versus Kyoya next for the last Japan spot. Despite my rant, I'll give this episode an A. The qualifying round for the selection tournament was kind of whatever, but you and Masamune gave us a good battle, finally getting to see strategies that weren't present in the first battle because of the nature of that battle. And again, despite the rant, it is nice to see Masamune's hard work as of late really paying off. Also, something funny was his whole celebration, chanting stuff like, "I'm good, you're not, I rule, you don't." And when you called him Masamune, he dramatically said, "I'm Masamune Kadoya." And you said, "No, you're not," even though he literally is. But yeah, A tier episode, moving on. Episode 5, Final Battle, Leon versus Eagle. In this episode, we get a battle between two heavyweights, Tsubasa and Kyoya, for the final regular spot on Team Japan, which there seemed to be a debate over who was better, but I always thought that it was clearly Kyoya, as he's just done more impressive stuff, put up a better fight against Ryuga. So you kind of get a Battle Bladers what if, and you also get the added aspect of Chiyun and Meimei scouting the match and showing off that they knew their stuff and they're very knowledgeable, and it's kind of they give you an introduction to the scouting aspect of the World Championships. We also get our introduction to the Dark Tsubasa plotline, for better or for worse, because I typed these entries out right after I finished watching the episode, but right now I am circling back to say that hey, maybe this Dark Tsubasa stuff isn't all positive, just saying. It was a really good evenly matched battle for the most part until Chiyun pointed out that Tsubasa fights too cleanly and that perhaps he doesn't have as much will to win as Kyoya, which will be something that Chiyun holds on to, he doesn't have the will to win. And shortly after this, Tsubasa's dark form started to take over as he became obsessed with winning and crushing Kyoya. However, this didn't work out for him, as although it seemed like he got somewhat of a power boost as he was able to burst through the tornado, he just wasn't in control, which led to his loss. This meant that Kyoya qualified for Team Japan. However, he was not planning on joining, as he wanted to beat Jinga. He can't beat Jinga while being on Team Japan. He just won this tournament just to flex and show Jinga that he got stronger, show him his power. I'll give this episode an A. I love that we get a heavyweight battle that we didn't really get to see in Fusion. They were in the Battle Royal, but that wasn't a 1v1, and I don't really remember them interacting that much. I believe Tsubasa was focused on Hyoma and Jinga, and Kyoya was focused on Yu and helping Kenta. It was a fun battle as they seemed to have counters for everything, and like Chiyun said, it came down to Kyoya having a bigger will to win. So yeah, A tier episode, moving on. Episode 6, Soar into the World. Because of Kyoya's departure, that left an extra spot open on Team Japan, which set up a final match between Yu and Tsubasa, where they both made the team, but this battle was to decide the regular and the sub member, which is kinda crazy. We already saw how weak Meimei was relative to the Metal Master's power creep. She's kind of a liability if she's not competing in a team battle, and even then, she doesn't have a lot of power. So if Team Japan is getting Yu or Tsubasa on their team as a sub, their worst member, then that's fine. That's an embarrassment of riches because they're both top 8 bladers in Metal Fusion. It's not like they're getting a Tobio or a Busujima or something, which is the caliber of blader that I think about when I hear the word substitute. So this was a stacked squad, they should definitely dominate. Anyways, we get a Tsubasa versus Yu fight that we just kept on getting teased with because every time they battled, it always ended up in a tie or they never finished it. We know that Tsubasa hard counters Yu's Libra, that's why it was interesting to see Yu come up with this new Inferno Blast technique that sends out different vibrations so Tsubasa's Eagle can't counter with vibrations of the same wavelength, forcing him to resonate with the wavelength to beat Yu and solidify his spot as a regular. So that's the team, Gan Galaxy, with Jinga, Masamune and Tsubasa as the regulars, Yu as a sub, and Madoka as their secret weapon. No, just messing around. She's their mechanic, a special support member that no one else really seems to have, but you can't leave her behind because then who's gonna convince you to buy all those Beyblades now, eh? Ah man, like wish she was much more, especially as a female character, as they don't really get much in this anime, especially with the sidelining of Hikaru and making her a manager. But like at the end of the day, Madoka is a mechanic, so it's not like she's like trying to be something outside of her role. But yeah, I'm gonna give this episode an A. Like I said, we got that Yu and Tsubasa battle that they kept on teasing us with, and even though we know that Libra can't mess with Eagle, I like how a new strategy was employed to add more intrigue to the battle. It was such a colorful battle, it looked so good. Also worth mentioning, no Dark Tsubasa in this battle, it's just like a strategic Tsubasa that we're all used to. Anyways, yeah, A tier episode, moving on. Episode 7, the Balin Temple in the Sky. This is the start of the China arc, the Wang Yuzhong arc. Now that they're in China, I've gotta say, it's crazy how they're all speaking the same language and can understand each other. Is it Japanese, Chinese, English? Are they like bilingual or polyglots? Or is it just an unserious anime and I should just go with it? Anyways, this episode was all about gaining intel on both sides actually. We got to meet more of the Chinese team. Wang Yuzhong, we met the leader, the Shine Wang at the Balin Temple, this intense training ground where the best Chinese bladers train. So Jinga and Masamune got to go through some training, then the Shine tricked Jinga into a battle with his Rock Zurafa, as Jinga hasn't battled for real in a while. I don't really count the Kenta and Benkei battle from the previous episode when like they were just trying to lift up his spirits for the world championships. Jinga didn't get to battle in the selection tournament and he no-diff, low-diff Masamune a bunch of times, so it was a really easy sell because the Shine's the best comp Jinga has faced since Ryuga. However, the Shine's intentions were to get as much information on Pegasus as possible, which was going to happen as Jinga used his best move, Pegasus Star Booster attack, after not being able to really affect Zurafa because of its rubber spin track. However, Masamune clocked this and entered the battle, stopping the special move clash before Pegasus could connect, saving their advantage, that unpredictability that was going to be foiled had Wang Yuzhong got to see the full power of Jinga's special move. Remember this moment, like I'm gonna circle back to this moment like a lot later in the series, but like just remember this right here. Like this is gonna be kind of important, I would say, when I want to like call out a little bit of a plot inconsistency. But yeah, I'm gonna give this episode a B grade. First episode of an arc, so it's introductory, it's an establishing episode. The battle was alright, but the training wasn't all that interesting. However, I will say it was interesting to see like just how another country goes about Beyblade. Japan doesn't really have something in place that's like this structured, I would say. Not even the Dark Nebula could hold a candle to what they have going on. So yeah, this world tour will be nice for expanding the world and seeing new strategies and like new ideologies, I would say. So yeah, B tier episode, moving on. Episode 8, the Third Man. In this episode, we finally get to meet the Third Man, the third regular member of the Chinese team, Chao Xin. He's sort of the black sheep or like wild card of the group, as we're just now meeting him right now. He wasn't in Japan scouting with Chiyun and Mei Mei. He wasn't at the Balin Temple with all three of them. Chiyun, while acknowledging his strength, doesn't speak of him highly, and this is all because he doesn't take Beyblade seriously. He never battles seriously, which Mei Mei lost to him, so that says a lot about how bad she is and a lot about how good Chao Xin is, that he gets by on raw strength and talent. They went in a different direction with this, which will be revealed in the World Tournament, but maybe a way to go about this story was having Mei Mei potentially surpass Chao Xin and become a regular in like a hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard type of scenario, especially like since she could be an important female blader, which we don't really have a lot of, I would say. But yeah, anyways, yeah, it's apparent that Beyblade to him isn't something deep. It's like just a way to look cool and like get girls, which Masamune discovered firsthand as they had a battle in this episode. They battled on the Great Wall of China, which is actually insane. Like, how did they have the idea to have them battle there? Like, wow, I love it. Chao Xin was using a pretty toxic combo on his Virgo, double Eternals, the Eternal Defense Spin Track and the Eternal Sharp Performance Tip, which gave him some advantages, but he only won this battle here because of the terrain, as Masamune had the upper hand, literally. He just broke the wall, which can't be relied upon in a regulation stadium, which the Shine like basically told him that his win was like kind of a fraudulent win. So Masamune and Chao Shin walked away from this battle with stuff that they needed to refine, and that set up their first round matchup. In this episode, there was a whole debate about which person was going to be the advanced guard, second in command, and commander, which they all typically battle in that order, which Masamune wanted to be the commander, of course. He's number 1. But after his loss to Chao Shin and seeing that he's the advanced guard of the Chinese team, Masamune's got to get some revenge, you know? I'm going to give this episode an A, mainly off the strength of the battle on the Great Wall of China. Like I said, that was insane, just running along the Great Wall of China and battling, like how the wall itself became part of the battlefield. It was such a good battle, visually pleasing, and I didn't care about the result. Like, I wasn't necessarily rooting for anyone, which made it easier to appreciate this battle. Episode 9, the World Championships begin. After Masamune's loss to Chao Shin, he went AWOL to train, focusing on gaining more strength, more power. However, when he met an old man and gave him a bite to eat, he repaid Masamune by teaching him how to focus all of his power into one point. This is a strategy that would later help Masamune in the first match of the World Championships against Chao Shin. He customized his Beyblade to a Poison Virgo, a good defensive fusion will. However, Masamune used his training to break off a blade of that fusion will, disrupting its balance and forcing Chao Shin to actually take the battle seriously for once, which he ended up losing because this was all new to him. I'm gonna give this episode an A. I like how this episode serves as development for both Masamune and Chao Shin, not just the main character. They both get to benefit. Masamune learned how to focus all of his energy into one point instead of being so reckless all the time, and Chao Shin finally started taking battle seriously, which will make him a better overall blader. And good thing for him, he doesn't have to worry about looking cool anymore because everyone likes him even more when he's actually trying for real, including his teammates. This battle gave them a better Chao Shin in return that may or may not help them later down the line. You never know. It's a great story, so I'm gonna give this episode an A. Episode 10, Lacerda's Will. I'm just gonna go ahead and give this episode a C off rip before even explaining what happened. I mean, it's in the title. You already know what's happening. Chi-Yoon's gonna win. Why would he get a little bit more screen time having him appear before the actual start of the China arc and reveal himself to be a strong guy if he wasn't going to be somewhat of an obstacle, if he wasn't going to matter later and just go down easily? Now, should he have gone down easily? Debatable, but yeah, no way he was losing. So, down 0-1, on the brink of elimination because of Chao Shin's loss, Chi-Yoon battled Tsubasa to keep the dreams of Wang Huzhong alive. Tsubasa kind of explained why I gave this episode a C, so much arrogant taunting that it was unbearable. Chi-Yoon talking himself up so much, thinking he can sit at the table with the big boys like Kyoya because Tsubasa is not good enough. He lost to Kyoya. Constantly referring to himself in third person, continuously saying that Tsubasa will never beat him, critiquing his fighting style that got him to the point where he was in the first place. And then when Chi-Yoon got a face full of exactly the power that he wanted out of Tsubasa because of his dark form and putting BTA, Chi-Yoon only won because Tsubasa self-destructed rather than any unique strategy or insane power. He got lucky after all of that trash talking and sort of got validated because of his win, even though he was not in control of that ending stretch of the battle, but neither was Tsubasa in control. This battle looks good visually, I'll give it that. It's a nice appearance from Dark Tsubasa again, showing that just because you have dark power, that doesn't mean that you're Ryuga. You might get a power buff potentially, but you can't control it. It's not an automatic win. I like aspects of this episode, but man, get Chi-Yoon off of my screen. I wish that he would have got his Beyblade broken or got his Beyblade burrowed into the ground forever, but that wasn't in the cards. You gotta milk it and get all 3 matches, especially since the Cheyenne and Jinga's first battle got interrupted. But yeah, I'm not gonna say it's not a great episode because Team Genkan Galaxy, our heroes, lost. I'm just saying that Chi-Yoon was so annoying and I want to rip his head off, which brought this episode down a lot. So C tier episode, moving on. Episode 11, the 4,000-year-old secret. In this episode, it's the final battle of this round, Game 7 Energy, between the Cheyenne and Jinga, which we've all been waiting for since the beginning of this arc. As usual, as the last match exposed, Zurafa's rubber spin track was a huge issue for Jinga and Pegasus, acting as a cushion. Also, we finally got to see that the Cheyenne can in fact block Pegasus's Star Booster attack, which was already kind of obvious if he felt so confident about trying to block it in their first match. A big theme throughout this match was like pride, national pride, and like trying to protect what came before them, as the Cheyenne thought that he was better than Digya because he was protecting a 4,000-year-old Balin Temple legacy. However, he wasn't the only one fighting for someone, as Digya was fighting for his friends that he also has a strong connection with, just like the Cheyenne in the Balin Temple, and this realization by Digya got him to break through those 4,000 years and Zurafa's spin track to deal some damage and take it out, winning Gan Gan Galaxy the round. I'll give this episode a B. The battle was fine, it was alright, but honestly for a team leader battle, it was kind of like underwhelming, especially when I just saw Masamune versus Chao Xin 2 episodes ago. Usually the weakest lead off, but that was definitely the best battle of this tournament so far. So while this arc isn't ending off on a very high note with an A, I have to say that I like the China arc. While I'm not in the China arc, these guys taught us about team battles and teamwork, which bled over into the China arc. We got the battle on the Great Wall, and Masamune and Chao Xin's growth was showcased, especially Chao Xin's growth was showcased in this episode, suggesting that the current iteration of Balin could just like start a new legacy. And yeah, I like the concept of Balin and like passing down all of these techniques like solid iron wall. Like it was nice to see how they Beybladed in China. So yeah, B tier episode. Moving on. Episode 12, The Bay with the Hero's Name. This is the start of the Russia arc / Inter Excalibur arc, as they're the main teams of this arc. This episode is not about Team Gan Gan Galaxy at all, which is something that I appreciated in Metal Fusion when they had like a fair amount of episodes that weren't Jenga focused. It's not about them, rather they're in the Middle East spectating the Team Desert Blaze versus Team Excalibur match. They get you rooting for Desert Blaze because it's a home court advantage and you get to meet their members. Also, the representative for the European team, Julian Conzern, shows up alone and is very confident in his abilities, very cocky, but it turns out that he can absolutely back it up and low diff all three of them with his Gravity Perseus Gravity Destroyer Beyblade, using the Eyes of Medusa to freeze Gasser's Beyblade, then showing off his reverse rotation against Carte and Zidane, which lets you know that he means business because the only other person to use a left rotating Beyblade ended up being such a big antagonist of Metal Fusion, Ryuga. However, you get the sense that Julian could possibly be better because unlike El Drago, Destroyer can rotate to the left and right, giving it more versatility. I'll give this episode a B. Like, it's not one of the best I've ever seen, especially since Desert Blaze was so weak. Like, they didn't offer up any interesting battles. Like, they were just fodder to show off how good Julian is, but it was kind of like a cool episode at points. They set up Julian here, you get to see how much of a threat he is, and like you still haven't seen the full team yet, so like yeah, that's going to be a scary team. It's a fine episode, and even though I didn't give it an A, it's a much needed episode for sure to like explore the world around Team Gan Gan Galaxy. Episode 13, The Wintry Land of Russia. There's a lot going on in this episode, but you can really sum it up to being like another intel gathering episode. It's the official start of the Russia arc, and this time Gan Gan Galaxy is on a train, the Polar Express to Russia, and they come across the Rizzler, Alexei, sort of the leader or like the brains of this Russian team, Team Lavushka, consisting of himself, Lyra, and Noaguma. At least he's the brains like out of the real bladers that are battling. The actual brains is Anton, their manager. He's yanking all of the strings. They're gaining intel on Gan Gan Galaxy, just like Wang Huzhong, but unlike them, they're literally cheating, having Alexei steal information from Madoka's laptop and like hamburger napping Masamune and getting him on the wrong train. A little Siberian surprise, you know? Despite wanting to hamburger nap Jenga, I'm gonna give this episode an A actually, which I wasn't necessarily expecting. I usually don't like episodes that are contained in like confined spaces, and the battles were basically like B-pit level battles since the Russians were weak and weren't even trying to use their real power, and no one could use their like real full power special moves on the train. But despite that, I like the heist of it all, giving me those Splinter Cell vibes. I also like how Madoka is getting more involvement because I'm not gonna lie, she doesn't have much depth to her, so like this sort of romance between her and Alexei, while nerdy, at least it's something to give her like a bit more personality, get her involved in something outside of the usual exposition dumping. So I like it. So yeah, A-tier episode. Moving on. Episode 14, How Grand, the Cage Match. In this episode, the battles begin against the Russian team without Masamune, causing Anton to have to change his plans. Basically, he has all of these rigged stadiums, so this time, because he knew that Jinga was battling, he made an electric cage stadium that would stop Pegasus from reaching the skies to use its Star Booster attack. Nowaguma was completely dominating this battle with his Rock Orso until at the very end when he wasn't, and Jinga broke through and used Star Booster attack and one-tapped him and won the match. So that's why I'm going to give this episode a C. The battle was kind of boring. Jinga was getting dominated for the most part. It wasn't really a back and forth affair. However, I understand why it can't be a back and forth affair, because in a fair fight, although they weren't going all out that time, we know that the Russians are weak, especially since they're cheating. I mean, for crying out loud, they're using metal fusion Beyblades that we've already seen before in Nowaguma's Rock Orso, Lyra's Rock Scorpio, and while we have not seen Alexei's Zuvizudovaruku, his burn wolf that he calls a space wolf, although we haven't seen that variant, we have seen a wolf before, and yeah, these are metal fusion Beyblades, when Metal Masters Beyblades aren't drastically different like the 40 system, but they definitely seem to be heavier, considering how weak someone like Mei was with her, I think it's a pre-hybrid Will Aquario. Not getting a new Metal Masters Beyblade is a big sign that they're much weaker, or they're just not important enough to give a new Beyblade to. Anyways, I explained why this episode is mid. Moving on. Episode 15, Libra departs for the front. Without Masamune and with Tsubasa fearing his dark form, Yu is forced to battle Alexei, the team leader. He's been waiting for his big break because ever since he got the sub gig, and particularly as of late, he's been complaining about that, and with Masamune out of the picture, he wants to battle, not even caring if he gets back, which is kinda dark. Well, he got his battle here, and it wasn't as easy for him because the Russians were cheating and using science to cancel out his special moves and make Alexei's Beyblade float, which Madoka felt betrayed because remember, she likes Alexei. Also, I talked about this in the Metal Fusion video, but isn't Madoka having this laptop and being able to analyze the Beyblades in stadiums on the spot also kind of cheating, especially in a matchup of this caliber? Anyways, the battle started to turn for Yu after receiving encouragement from Jinga about how he's a Bay genius, which prompted him to destroy the stadium to disrupt the wave energy and essentially one-tap Wolf for a clean sweep. Bust out the broomsticks, eh? Also, Masamune got back from his little adventure and beat Anton, playing a part in why the stadium malfunctioned. I'm gonna give this episode an A. I might rank all of the arcs one day. While I absolutely cannot say that the Russia arc provided us with some intense battles like the Wang Huzhong arc, I can say that I like the storytelling and the aspects around the battles. I already talked about how much I like the Madoka and Alexei connection, giving her a bit more involvement, in which I wish that some romance could be explored more in the show, just to give Madoka more, you see how it could add stakes to the battle in a way, maybe that could have been something that they went back to. But yeah, I also liked how they really got you to feel for the Russian team. The way I remembered it is that they're just a bunch of cheaters, which is true. However, Anton was behind all of this, and you could tell that Alexei felt bad about it. They also get you to really feel for them because their dreams of going to outer space are tied to winning this tournament and getting a sponsor for their space program. So I absolutely love that by the end of it all, they got a sponsor and a happy ending. Despite qualifying for the national team, they're kind of garbage at Beyblade. I'm gonna say it right now. Out of the teams that we meet throughout this whole entire journey, this is definitely a bottom 3 team in that Desert Blaze tier. But they seem like some bright kids, good scientists with a dream that just went down the wrong path, kind of like you with Doji and the Dark Nebula. Speaking of Doji and the Dark Nebula, it's kind of crazy to see them absolutely rule Fusion and be these big, threatening antagonists. Then you see this diet version of Doji and Anton get dealt with swiftly by Masamune of all people, someone that would go on to be a huge laughingstock, which made it even funnier. But yeah, that's the end of the Russia portion of this Russia / Inter Excalibur arc. that's the end of Lavushka's story in Metal Masters, as we're not going to see them again really. They're the only team that Gan Gan Galaxy faces that doesn't play a role in the big end game of this season, making their World Tournament battles feel like kind of a filler arc. Like nothing that Gan Gan Galaxy did or learned here really had an impact on this season. I think it's filler, but it's not terrible filler. Like there's a lot to love about the Lavushka part of this Russia/Inter Excalibur arc. Anyways, A tier episode, moving on. Episode 16, The Festival of Warriors. This episode takes the gang to Greece as they'd like to spectate the Festival of Warriors, where they send the best blader or like a few of their best bladers from each European Union country to compete in this ceremony event, which seemed like somewhat of a qualification tournament to represent Europe's team, Excalibur. This is not an original point. I actually got this from a YouTube video. Check out a guy named Kai and his Beyblade Metal Saga retrospectives. Like, man, those videos were actually really nice to have on my walks. Like I watched them multiple times. But yeah, echoing his point, why is there even a European team to begin with? Why is it that Team Excalibur gets to take the best in Europe, a whole continent, or at least just the best from the European Union, which is still a lot, while others seem to only be able to take from their countries? Like, where's the All Asia team where you could swap out you with the Cheyenne? They probably have it this way because in universe there's only one good blader per European country, I'm guessing, and maybe out of universe they just wanted to cover more ground, explore more of Europe, but it just really doesn't make much sense at all. This never gets resolved, I would say. Anyways, they had to sneak into the festival because they're xenophobic. If you're not part of the European Union, you're not allowed entry. And after they finished dominating some randoms, the real Team Excalibur was revealed. We already know about Kanzern, but we met his twin Jules in this episode. Sophie, representing France. Love her voice actor's performance, by the way, so elegant, which really captures what they're going for with this character. And I'm just gonna say it right now, I wish they could have done something with the archaeology that she was talking about to add depth to her character, which was never picked up again in this season. Of course, I have to watch Fury to see the evolution of her character, but yeah, mentioning the archaeology and never following up on it seems like a missed opportunity to give her more personality, maybe make her more likable, more of a character, I would say. But yeah, she uses a white Grand Cetus and seems like one of the nicer members of her elitist team, as she actually gave a decent explanation for why Gan Gan Galaxy wasn't allowed at the Festival of Warriors, and only got justifiably mad when Gan Gan Galaxy snuck in and you started destroying the stadium in their eventual battle. So it's they got a longer leash with her instead of her saying stuff like, beat it, you're nobodies from nowhere, like her tag team partner said at the entrance. Then there's Wales using a blue Cetus. He's representing England, which, one, his name is Wales. He has a whale-based Beyblade, so why not just go the extra mile and make him Welsh from Wales? That would have been perfect. Anyways, because he's from the UK, if the show were made today, he would not be eligible for Team Excalibur, as the UK is still in Europe. That's not changing. I hear that way too often, that the UK isn't part of Europe anymore. That's not true. However, it is not part of the EU, the European Union, anymore. Anyways, a team battle breaks out where Yu was no diffed by Sophie's Grand Maelstrom special move for trying to mess up the stadium with his sand, which when people complain about Yu being nerfed, they talk about this moment and how his supersonic waves can push away water, in the fight against Hyoma in Metal Fusion. But they conveniently ignore that while this was happening, Madoka said that it's not water, it's a spiral of air that looks like water. So maybe getting one tap was OD, I could give you that, but I can't agree that Libra's abilities were nerfed here because it's not even water. Anyways, despite Jinga and Masamune's teamwork being better than it was at the start in the Chiyun and Meimei battle, it could still use a bit of work, especially against Wales and Sophie that have their very own joint special move, Grand Decalion, combining their Grand Fleet and Grand Victoire special moves respectively. Despite being able to get past their tidal wave, which the twin Jules made it their mission to protect Julian, as no one has ever made it past them, so at least Masamune pierced an opening in their tidal wave and created an opening for Digya to get to Destroyer. However, Digya just wasn't even able to scratch Destroyer. They just used up so much energy trying to get past the Twin Jewels, which lost them the match. And considering the left rotation and no diffing Team Desert Blaze that we've seen out of Julian, and what we've seen here with the Twin Jewels having rock solid defenses with their Grand Cetus Beyblades and having a joint special move and beating Gan Galaxy so easily, this actually sets them up as the antagonist of this season. Now, will that hold? By the end of it all, will they still be the best team or a top 2 team in the World Championships? Well, that's yet to be seen. But if you were just watching this for the first time, you would believe that they mean business, as they're so much better than the Russians and a fair bit better than the Chinese team. And we haven't even seen their sub member yet. Also, you just want to see them get taken down because they all have a cocky attitude and they're xenophobic. But they're right, because Gan Galaxy interrupted their special European festival, and they can actually back up their talk as they've shown in this episode, low diff. So you just want to see how Gan Galaxy gets over this hurdle, a much more formidable hurdle than Team Wang Huzhong, and you see it'll take more growth to beat them. I'm gonna give this episode an A. I definitely liked it. I already went over why I liked it so much. I liked how sacred and grand this felt, where only EU members could meet, and whenever they lost, they felt like they were letting their country down. Which is why I like the World Tournament, seeing that national pride and how other countries treat Beyblade. I also like the lightheartedness before the battles, where Madoka just wanted to enjoy boring stuff while the guys just wanted to enjoy guy stuff, and she kept on getting mad at them for talking about Beyblade all the time. I like the uptick in Madoka content as of late and giving her more of a personality. So yeah, definitely an A tier episode, fun battle. I absolutely love the Twin Jewels and their joint special move, and yeah, good establishing episode for Team Excalibur. Episode 17, we meet again Wang Huzhong. I'm gonna go ahead and slap an A on this episode right quick because it was so funny. After Team Gan Galaxy's loss to Excalibur, they wanted to work as a team, but were struggling at that, so much so that the leader of the team, Madoka, wanted to shut down the team because of their bickering. However, things started to change for them when Team Wang Huzhong showed up, revealing that they're still in this thing because of the wildcard system, and they wanted to help Gan Galaxy so they can beat them at their best. So that's what happened in this episode, teamwork training. I just keep on talking about Madoka's involvement as of late, and I will again. I like how she's taking over and being more of a comedic presence with her bossiness, really living up to all that trash that Benkei was talking about her, calling her a bossy boots girl in Fusion before they got to Coma Village in the Hyoma episode. It's funnier because she doesn't even Beyblade for real, but they fear her so much. And since they share the same voice actor, it kind of reminds me of Total Drama Revenge of the Island when Zoe went into her commando mode. While I think that Tsubasa was a bit out of character here, it was a funny episode because of all of that bickering. Also, I will say it's a good payoff to the team battle introduction all of those episodes ago in Japan, giving that battle a lot more importance actually. These guys are amazing individual bladers as seen in Metal Fusion and Battle Bladers, with Digya winning the whole thing, Tsubasa blocking Ryuga's dark move, and while Yu was first rounded, it's because he ran into Digya. I have him as a top 8 blader in Fusion and a top 6 blader in the tournament. Also, I believe that Masamune would perform well in Battle Bladers. He's definitely better than Yu, near that Tsubasa tier, but not better than Tsubasa. They're all amazing individual bladers, but they have absolutely no teamwork, which is unacceptable on the world stage. Even with the training, it seemed like their teamwork was bad, but when the prospect of losing the world tournament was brought up, they got their act together because winning is what bonds them, and they actually started working as a team. I really like this episode. It's a nice ending to the Russia/Inter Excalibur arc, or the Festival of Warriors mini arc within this arc, or a bridge arc before the Wild Fang arc. And speaking of that, let's go ahead and get right into some peak. Episode 18, The Scorching Hot Lion. This is the start of the Africa arc, or the Wild Fang arc, as they don't stay in Africa for the whole time. We already heard about their success in the previous episode, so this episode is a flashback to how the team was formed. You see, the African selection tournament was like a tournament for rejects, as they let anyone compete. All the manager cared about was getting their name known, all about that clout. It was a 2-stage tournament where Kyoya and Niall won their battle royal easily with his Vulcan Harusius Beyblade, and Marcus won because he cheated, making him the 3rd member of the team, or at least the 3rd bracelet holder. In the second part, they had to protect those bracelets for 24 hours in sort of a survival battle style format. You could either face everyone head on like Kyoya, or you could avoid battles like Niall wanted to until Kyoya got him to speak his language, you know? And of course, Marcus wanted to hide because his win was mistaken. That's kind of like what the second part was built for, to expose you if you weren't that good and got lucky. Showing off his underhanded tactics even more, he lured Kyoya and Niall into his hiding spot to steal their bracelets and give it to his friends. However, this guy Demare that they met had insane eyesight and was able to pinpoint their location and analyze their moves before they even happened, helping Kyoya and Niall get their bracelets back and making him a valuable addition to Team Wildfang. You already know this episode is going to get an A. In the Metal Fusion video, I already talked about how I like the survival battle arc, so of course I'm going to like something that gave off similar vibes. It's a Kyoya exclusive. It's a nice episode showing off how Kyoya was able to change Niall's ideology and mold him into a better blader that followed his pathway, a risk taker that will face anyone head on just like him. And yeah, W flashback episode. I usually don't like them, but this was done well. I actually cared about the formation of the team more than the current information about them winning those battles and being undefeated and all. So yeah, A-tier episode. Moving on. Episode 19, The Shocking Wildfang. That title pretty much sums up the episode, because right when you think that Team Excalibur is undefeatable, you have Team Wildfang looking scary. In this episode, they went to India to battle the Indian team, Shandora, for the right to face Team Gangan Galaxy. The reason why Team Wildfang was undefeated and remained undefeated is actually out of necessity. They lead off with Niall, then Kyoya battles second to finish things off for the 2-0 sweep, because they're really front heavy, they're not working with much outside of them. You saw Demare in the previous episode, probably a bit better than the average blader because of his eyesight, but at the end of the day, he's only working with the counter Scorpio, and his strength level is probably more in line with the Russians, maybe even worse because Noaguma was kind of strong. Then you have Benkei, the Masked Bull. That was clearly definitely a Kyoya pick, giving off massive service goon, water boy, coach's son, cheerleader type of energy. Borderline top 10 blader infusion, but definitely nowhere near there right now thanks to the Metal Master's power creep. There's sub members that are better than him, which he is a sub, he's probably lower tier of those subs. I bet that Mei could give him a good fight, one of the lesser Metal Master's bladers, but probably would have been borderline top 10 infusion just like Benkei. Because Benkei isn't good enough to keep up with the world competition, then he's relegated to being a hype guy, just a number to have, break glass in case of emergency type of guy. No emergency here, as Niall and Kyoya low diff their competition, and Kyoya even showed off a new strategy that was it was framed as new, which I guess it is. When he used an aerial tornado against Benkei and Battle Bladers, Leon was on its side. This time, however, it flipped over upside down, which was framed as a Jenga counter. I'll give this episode a B, only because it was interesting to see a bit of Kyoya's new strategy. Outside of that, the quality of the battles weren't all that good. They weren't interesting battles because they were low diffs. Not saying that the Indian team is complete garbage because they were undefeated prior to this match, just like Wildfang, but who were they even battling anyways? Considering that they were undefeated, they probably weren't as bad as they showed, but hey, they caught Team Wildfang, so that's that. But yeah, that's why the battles weren't all that interesting. Also, I don't know where to put this in, but it is interesting how the Japanese people were happy to see Kyoya battle and didn't see him as a traitor. I guess that just shows how respected of a blader he is. But yeah, B tier episode. Moving on. Episode 20, Harusius vs Striker. They're back in Japan to take on Team Wildfang, which is interesting as I originally always thought that Gan Galaxy was on the road for all of their matches. I never thought that they would actually get a home game, but here it is. Anyways, this whole episode is a butt beating and absolute humbling. We go all of the first half of this episode hearing about how Masamune is #1 and he wants to battle Kyoya. He wants to sit at the table with the big boys as Kyoya is the team leader. It's kind of funny how up until now everyone kind of just went along with this #1 stuff or mocked him, nothing serious. But when he wanted to battle Kyoya, everyone ganged up on him, basically saying, you're not him, because he's Jinga's opponent, because they actually understand the history and that's what the fans want to see, you know? So Masamune picked the fight with Nile that he would regret. #1 this, #1 that. Well, Nile made sure he ate those words, literally having him on his hands and knees in this battle. Pause, but it is true. I'll say that Masamune got mid-diff rather than low-diff because he hung around and actually performed well before Harus descended to Earth and Harusius started glowing. When it was glowing, that's when Masamune really started getting beat bad. Couldn't even make a scratch on Harusius. So that's the reason why it's a mid-diff, and Nile said that he's better than he thought, forcing him to use his real power. And in the special move clash, Nile was yelling, so it wasn't easy. It's not like Masamune did nothing, but he still got beat and was never in the catbird seat in this battle. It's a humbling. It's sort of framed as if Masamune was too overconfident and maybe had he been less so, he would have had a chance to win, but I don't really know, man. He eventually used his best tactic, the 1-point breakthrough, lightning sword flash, but he got his horn broken by Mystic Zone, so possibly Nile was always just better. Masamune was never going to win, and the moral of the story is to not go around calling yourself #1 all willy-nilly, which he was humbled for in this fight that he picked, taking his first loss in the World Championships, and in fact not being on Kyoya's level like he thought. Wasn't better in the selection tournament, not better now. I'll give this episode a B. It was a good episode. If I gave it an A, that means that I think it was some peak stuff. I don't think that Masamune getting beat up for most of this battle is peak, but I think it's a humbling that he definitely needed to have. And out of all of his World Tournament losses in Metal Masters, I definitely say keep this loss no matter what. Not that this #1 stuff was getting annoying or anything, but he just kept on calling himself the #1 blader over and over and over again, despite not having the feats to back it up, when he lost to Jinga a bunch of times, and when Kyoya and Tsubasa got more points than him in the Japan qualifying tournament, and when they lost to Julian Concern in the Twin Jewels, and when they tied with Wang Huzhong in the teamwork episode. He's never shown that he's #1, but having this be his first loss on the world stage hits even harder, so maybe it's a necessary loss for his development and they build on it later. We'll see. But yeah, B tier episode. Moving on. Episode 21, Eternal Rivals. This is what we've all been waiting for, the long-awaited Kyoya vs Jinga rematch, as they haven't had a formal real 1v1 since episode 10 of Metal Fusion. This time, Gan Galaxy is on the brink of elimination, which changes the mood compared to the previous 2 rounds, as they always experienced the upper hand. They were always in the catbird seat, never having to win 2 straight. That was just kind of a luxury, I would say. Also, I am tapped in. I know that this match is considered to be the biggest robbery in Beyblade history, or at least the Metal Saga. I haven't watched anything else yet. So the reason why it's considered a robbery is because Kyoya had counters for everything because of his training at the Valley of Storms, now being able to use true forms of all of his already existing special moves. All of this training helped him to climb up his own tornado to stop Pegasus from getting the high ground, then using King Lion reverse wind strike from above, which not only sent Pegasus to the ground and inflicted major damage, but since Leon was upside down, it was a left rotating tornado, pushing up against Pegasus in its right rotation. I could understand the frustration because Kyoya had counters for everything. Meanwhile, Jinga was only able to make it through because of his blader spirit and not wanting to lose, which is why this battle ended up in a tie and them literally passing out. But as of late, I have been hearing arguments that the battle is bogus, but not because of Jinga's plot armor. Rather, it's the need to make Jinga's battles interesting because he's way stronger than Kyoya and just turned into an idiot in this battle, and Stormbringer could have destroyed everything that Kyoya had. However, it's not like Galaxy Pegasus is an evolution of Storm Pegasus, you know, like Pokemon style, when a Mon evolves, it keeps its moveset. No, this is a completely new Beyblade, and he has not used any of its old special moves that Storm Pegasus had. So while if he was using his Storm Pegasus, he for sure would have lost because of power creep, but also because Galaxy Pegasus is not Storm Pegasus, he might not actually have access to Stormbringer. Now, I'm typing this in here after watching the whole entire season, he could use Stormbringer on his Galaxy Pegasus way later on in the season. So the question is if he always had access to it and just decided not to use it. If that is the case, that Stormbringer and all of his other special moves like Tornado Wing and Meteor Shower Attack were still on Galaxy Pegasus, then I'd have to agree, because why is Kyoya getting to show off everything that he has? Meanwhile, Jinga's moveset is limited. Jinga being nerfed to make the tournament more competitive, I could probably buy a bag of that, but it all depends on if he had to unlock his old special moves, kind of like how that episode later in the season frames it, or if he always had access to them. Anyways, I'll give this episode an A, despite the battle actually being kind of underwhelming. It didn't really live up to its potential. Like I said, Kyoya had counters for everything, so I wish there were more counters on Jinga's end that got Kyoya rattled. That's why it was underwhelming, but at the end of the day, it's Jinga versus Kyoya. Now, this isn't their best fight, but it was cool to see how far Kyoya had come, to the point where Jinga's Pegasus doesn't rule the skies anymore. It's his Leon, so it's just nice to see how far Kyoya has come, which is the main reason why this episode is gonna get an A. It was an intense battle. Episode 22, the third match, On the Edge. You gotta go this episode without Jinga and Kyoya and rely on this B team of sorts and others to fill in the roles of the leaders. Because of the tie, basically nothing happened. Gen Galaxy is still in a winner go home scenario. Here's where the structure of Team Wildfang that I was talking about comes into play. Because Benkei and Demore are weaker, break glass in case of emergency type of bladers, and we already saw Benkei get beat by Yu and Tsubasa in Fusion without seemingly surpassing them, Nile taking over as the leader suggested a team battle, which Yu accepted because he would get to battle. However, that would be somewhat of a mistake. Potentially. If it were just a normal battle like how it was originally going to play out, Tsubasa would have absolutely owned Demore. But in a team battle, Demore could analyze the Beyblades and what they're all about and see their movements before they happen. So he acted as somewhat of a control tower, and Benkei acted as the strength to carry out those orders, really working well as a team, really filling in for each other's weaknesses. Meanwhile, Yu and Tsubasa weren't working well as a team, despite getting help from Team Wang Huzhong a couple of episodes ago. This episode wasn't to showcase their teamwork and that storyline. That stuff was scrapped to focus on the Dark Tsubasa plotline, this raging dark form that activates whenever the prospect of losing comes up. When he went dark, nothing else mattered. He just took over and won the battle, and even triggered Hikaru's PTSD, which made me sad that she quit Beyblade to get away from the dark power, but she can't escape it. I feel bad for her. Dark Tsubasa even tried to off his pet eagle that snapped him out of the darkness against Kyoya, but it wasn't enough here, showing that the dark power is taking over and getting stronger. We've not seen Ryuga yet at this point. We don't even know if he's still in Metal Masters, as it seems like a name that people are trying to avoid saying, but his influence still lives on. I'll give this episode an A. It's a Jinga less and Kyoya less episode, probably the main characters of this series, but despite that, they were able to put together a good episode. Despite the battle, not being won really because of teamwork, you get to see the importance of it yet again, and how like every team that battles is just better at it than Team Gan Gan Galaxy, despite Wild Fang's loss here. It was such an interesting battle to see that team cohesion. Maybe Demore is weak, maybe Benkei isn't the most strategic guy, but when they combine their strengths, they make a really good team that probably could have won if they were facing like maybe a team Wang Huzhong, or like if Lavushka team battled, or like Desert Blaze, Shandora. But they just ran into a rampaging Tsubasa that knocked out his own teammate, and even Tsubasa couldn't control himself. So it's not like a terrible loss. Like, they actually really surprised me. I am still going to give this episode an A, but I will ask the question, should this battle have been competitive anyways? I know I talked about Benkei and Maximum Stampede and how maybe that can overwhelm the Inferno Blast since Masamune opened up the door for that. But since Benkei doesn't use Maximum Stampede again, it seems like Demore and Benkei have no counter for Inferno Blast. So like, why not use it? I guess he didn't want to eliminate Tsubasa, but between the shockwaves and the resonance, I think that they could possibly work something out. I'm just trying to throw you a bone here because I know that Metal Masters wasn't his best showing. Like, this is definitely not his season. Maybe this could have been a big moment for him, but you're starting to see how you and Masamune are getting shafted for Jinga and Tsubasa. Masamune has to lose the first match so you can have 2 more matches, and those matches are for the Dark Tsubasa storyline and for Jinga to battle the leader, and this will not be the first time it happens. I suppose you can go like the China arc, Masamune wins first, Tsubasa loses in the middle, and then like Jinga wins, but they wanted Tsubasa to win. Like, they wanted him to be a good blader, so it's like you and Masamune have to get the short end. They lose battles and get less importance in battles just to prop up those two, and that'll be very apparent later on. It's not a problem that will stop this episode from getting an A, but like, I'm just bringing it up. So yeah, this was a good A tier episode. Episode 23, The End of a Fierce Struggle. This is an episode that I will ultimately give a grade to, despite not really knowing how to feel about it. It's a winner go home team battle between Wild Fang and Gan Gan Galaxy, where despite the injuries, they decided to send their aces out there, Jinga and Kyoya, and because of how destructive the previous battle was, they went with Nile and Masamune, as Nile is the second strongest, and while I believe that Tsubasa is stronger than Masamune, he's hospitalized. This episode promises a lot, as it's essentially a combined rematch of the first 2 battles. Nile has nothing to show as he already beat Masamune and humbled him, so this is about Masamune getting revenge, and since Jinga and Kyoya tied, this was an opportunity to settle the score. That's really all anyone was worried about, actually, settling the score with their rival, until Masamune realized that he's not him, he's not better than Nile, and that they have to work together as a team to beat him, and this realization got them working as a team before Wild Fang. Because of Leon's damage, it couldn't hold off Striker from hitting Herusius before Mystic Zone activated, winning Gan Gan Galaxy the match. I say that I don't know how to feel about this episode because while I like the outcome, I like that Masamune got his revenge, I kind of don't really like how it happened. First off, this was the teamwork battle, where Team Gan Gan Galaxy could show off what they learned from Team Wang Huzhong, but that only happened at the very end of the battle. It's not like they used any special formations like Team Wang Huzhong had. It's not even like they came up with a joint special move like the Cetus team had. Striker just pushed Pegasus up into the air and they used their special moves at the same time, which isn't a joint special move. It's not like a new team strategy or like a new technique that they came up with. They wanted to tie in the teamwork aspect, which they definitely did. That's why they got the high ground and put Wild Fang on the defensive. Like, I can see that's how they won the match, but it's not like Jinga and Masamune never cooperated as a team before, as that's how they beat Chiyun and Mei Mei in Japan, and that's how they cut through the waves of the Cetus team. They've shown that they can work together as a team with their backs against the wall, so I would like to see something more specialized, like mimicking some of the team strategies that were used against them to add even more significance to the Wang Huzhang training if they picked up some of their formations, like especially since Wang Huzhang talked about how they learn so quickly. Maybe they wouldn't be able to use a 4,000-year-old technique, but maybe like a weaker version of it, or like maybe make their own formation. Like that would have been nice. Also, I don't know if I love the way that Masamune won here. For some reason, Mystic Zone took so long to activate after we've literally seen it a couple of times in this arc, and we know that it's fast. And even Madoka said something along the lines of like it was so fast that she couldn't analyze it. So this charge up time makes absolutely no sense. Maybe if Digya and Kyoya needed extra time to charge up their special moves, that's understandable because of their injuries, but Nile mid-diff Masamune, and this battle was taking place on another day, so like there's really no excuse for the charge up time unless maybe Leon's tornado somehow interfered, but that didn't seem to be a problem when they beat Marcus, so like I can't even give that to them. Digya versus Kyoya gets talked about as a robbery, but what about this battle? Also, I don't know if I like Masamune needing help. On one hand, I like that he got humbled and is realizing that he's not number one and could use some help, but are you telling me that after seeing how quickly he learned Jinga's fighting style and the 1-point breakthrough, he couldn't find a way to beat Mystic Zone on his own? It's like you're taking a step forward by making him have the humility to realize that he's not number one, but you're getting in the way of him being number one by winning under shaky circumstances, where the only reason why he was able to win was because Harusius didn't get off a Mystic Zone that took uncharacteristically long to charge, and he only got there because Leon was damaged, meaning that in a normal battle, he's not beating Nile without help and ridiculous circumstances. I don't know, man, like there's stuff to like, stuff to dislike, but I'll go ahead and give this episode an A. Masamune got his revenge, he came out on top, and yeah, clap it up for the Wildfang team, a team that was kind of put together on the fly, consisting mostly of bladers that aren't even native to the region where the tournament was taking place, but man, like they caused some major damage in these world championships and gave us probably the best and like most sitting on the edge of your seat type of arc in the show so far. So yeah, A tier episode. Moving on. Episode 24, The Creeping Darkness. This episode is the end of the Wildfang era for now, as they split up and went their separate ways, as there's nothing left for them because like they went too far into the tournament. There's no wild card round to save them. They just lost and like they can't compete anymore. But hey, respect. I already explained why they're likable. Like they're a bunch of unique bladers that joined Savannah's team for one reason or another, as like possibly their only chance to really compete in the world championships and accomplish their goal. Like they caused some major damage in the world championships and gave our heroes some good battles and like got out of there quickly and aren't hanging around like the Chinese and European teams. Not that it's a bad thing that those teams are hanging around, because like there have been some good things that came from both the Chinese and European teams, but like that aspect adds to Wildfang's aura, their mystique. Anyways, it's the official start of the Europe arc, or the Excalibur arc, which they got their introduction way before this, but like these episodes are focusing on them. Before we get to their battle, we learn that Tsubasa is infected with the same dark power that Ryuga was infected with, finally saying his name, and since they flash back to his battle with Ryuga, I have questions about why Tsubasa and Kyoya didn't get traumatized by the dark power as well, since like they seem to all get their souls taken by El Drago. Tsubasa got infected with the dark power, but he's not traumatized like Hikaru. He's still blading. Maybe it's because they're stronger bladers and have like stronger will, a stronger passion for the game, or like maybe they're just guys and like they're seen as tougher. I don't know, but yeah, because of the destruction that the dark power created and like how this new WBBA is committed to making sure something like that never happens again, they tossed out the idea of disqualifying Tsubasa from the team, but agreed to find Ryuga and use the WBBA's resources to help Tsubasa after the team got upset at that. Then for the battle, first, I had a question about why the European home court is in France, Sophie's home country, when the leader is from Italy, Julian. But that got answered later, like they alternate, seemingly. However, they shouldn't be playing in any of these countries. Despite all of the representatives being from Western Europe, it seems like a bit biased that the home courts that we see are all in Western Europe rather than somewhere like in the middle, you know, like what if an Eastern European wanted to see their battles? How about Germany, where Klaus is from? Anyways, Wang Huzhang won the consolation tournament and they can clinch their spot in the A block finals to face Gan Galaxy again if they beat Team Excalibur. But like, you know, that was never happening. But yeah, we finally get a true team battle between the twin Jules and Chaoshin and Mei Mei, where it felt like everyone competing was committed to teamwork from the jump, unlike the battles in the Wildfang arc where the Tsubasa and Yu battle, like they didn't even work as a team, and Masamune and Jenga only worked together like at the very end. But like from the jump, these guys were committed to teamwork, which should have led to an interesting battle, which at points it kind of was. Like, it was nice to see the teamwork, and they had to see this team surprised at a point or two, but Wales and Sophie low diffed them, giving us a visually pleasing battle, but it was uncompetitive. Like, they're only getting like 4 minutes of battle time in. It probably could have benefited from being a bit longer, but it wasn't supposed to be longer because the Cetus team were just clearly better, and the Chinese team is just here to be fodder to show off how good the European team is in the championships, as this is the first time that we get to see the Cetus team compete in these championships, and next episode we're going to get to see Klaus compete for the first time in these world championships. I'm going to give this episode a C. It's sort of a cool down episode from the intensity of the Wildfang fight, focusing more on Tsubasa and his darkness and like giving us an okay battle. It's an alright episode, but definitely not one that I just like have to rewatch right away. Funny enough, the best part of this episode was probably at the tail end when it finally gave Klaus's introduction and he was like sitting on top of the Eiffel Tower, aura forming. Like, I just found that kind of funny and wild. Episode 25, The Axe of Destruction. The first half of this episode was about the Chiyun and the Cheyenne dynamic and how they trained at Bailin Temple for years, and Chiyun wants to fulfill the Cheyenne's dream. They built that up so that in the second half, the battle, Klaus could axe it all down with his Grand Capricorn. Like, he just completely bodied him. Chiyun got his head busted. Klaus only got knocked back one time when Chiyun used Lacerda's special move. Klaus even broke through his solid iron wall. Like, this wasn't even a contest. Bro thought that he was in Kyoya conversations. I mean, like, get out of the Klaus conversations first. I absolutely love Klaus's introduction. It's so funny and like flashy and over the top, with him showing up fashionably late and jumping down the stairs, and like, I absolutely love his theme song. But yeah, he's an extremely strong guy with incredible launch power and just uses brute strength to beat his opponents like an axe. Also, I thought that his Claw of the Storm moves were the same moves, just increasing in power as they went on, but like, no, actually, it seems like Claw of the Storm first is just like a head-on attack, Claw of the Storm second is an aerial attack, and Claw of the Storm third is an uppercut. So like, that was interesting to learn. Also, I have an observation or a question about his strongest special move, Steel Darkness. Well, why darkness? When I think about darkness, I think of Doji's Dark Wolf and his Darkness Howling Blazer special move, and like the Dark Nebula and Dark Power. Klaus is on the antagonist team, but like, they don't seem to be evil. Actually, as he gets more development, he actually seems to be a decent guy and probably the second nicest on his team behind Sophie, so his Steel Darkness special move kind of feels out of place here. But yeah, I'll give this episode a C. Like, the battle was kind of meh. I thought that I would have absolutely loved to see Chiyun get humbled, which is nice that it's all coming back around because he was really power tripping in the Tsubasa fight. However, like, ever since then, we aren't getting a face full of him like we did in the China arc, and he's actually been chilling since then. Like, in the China arc, specifically the Tsubasa battle, I don't know what was in the water that he was drinking, but like, yeah, he was moving like a god. He implied that he thought that he was on the same level as Kyoya, but he only won against Tsubasa because he self-destructed, so it looks like that narrow win kind of humbled him. So because of that, and like because he stopped power tripping, I didn't really need to see him get humbled as much as I thought I did, which kind of takes away from this episode a bit. The battle was kind of mid because Chiyun got easily dog-walked. Actually, none of these battles were supposed to be amazing. Like I said, Wang Yuzhang was kind of just fodder, like just a punching bag to continue showing off how great Excalibur was, especially for Klaus's big introduction. So like, you know, he's got to be a powerhouse in his introduction, just like every character is when they get their introduction. But yeah, that's all I can really say. It's a C tier episode. Moving on. Episode 26, The Dragon Emperor Returns. Come on, you know they weren't going to leave him out of this season. Here we get a sweet episode, a non-Gan Galaxy episode outside of Tsubasa. You see in the background of the main stuff that's been going on, Hiyomo was looking for Ryuga and Tsubasa went missing and his journey took him to Italy, Julian's home country, where the A block finals will be held, which just goes back to my point from before and adds more confusion. Like, how is this stuff decided? Like, are they alternating between the 4 countries after every round so everyone gets a chance to see their representative? I don't know, but like, it would still make more sense to have a central stadium in Germany, maybe like slightly more east, but yeah. Anyways, Tsubasa's journey took him to Julian, seeking to battle against the strongest and showing off his dark power, which attracted Ryuga as he saved Tsubasa from Grand Decalion and explained how he saved himself from the dark power and has a new power and apparently an evolved Beyblade, a Medio El Drago, unlike Jenga's new Galaxy Pegasus that is not an evolution of Storm Pegasus. He was able to easily knock this undefeatable Team Excalibur down a peg and really get to Julian as we went through this whole episode seeing Julian's rich lifestyle and how he wants to dominate in every field. Now he's being met with another left rotating Beyblade that's possibly stronger than his, and he got his Beyblade called a toy, which is the first time that we've ever seen the European team like this, facing some resistance, some adversity. I'll give this episode an A. It was a good episode without the main guys. Like, it gives us some good insight into Julian's past. We get to learn more about where Ryuga's been, and we see this snobby European team get knocked down a peg. It's such an interesting episode. I like it. That's why it gets an A. Episode 27, Exceed the Limit. That's what this battle was all about. Klaus is a blader that I would say is like just about evenly matched with Masamune in terms of base strength, like they're in the same tier. However, the reason why he is better and why he was able to win the first battle of this Excalibur versus Gan Galaxy round is because when he lost the Steel Darkness and Lightning Sword Flash special move clash and was on the actual verge of defeat with the wobbling Grand Capricorn, he exceeded his limits to get one final burst to beat Masamune, but he passed out because, well, he went past his limits. Also in the background, we have Tsubasa getting returned to Gan Galaxy by Ryuga, and Ryuga wanting to repay his debt to Jenga for saving him from the dark power. I'll give this episode an A grade, although I am unsure like how to feel about it. It was a really nice, evenly matched battle between Klaus and Masamune. Maybe I would have liked to see a little more strategic variety, like whatever happened to Ray Striker's like teleportation type stuff that was a big player in like the first few episodes. Like, he was spamming it, but it hasn't really been a factor since. Like, I could be completely wrong, but I actually don't believe that I've seen this move since like the Chao Shin fight on the Great Wall of China. Like, if not that, we for sure have not seen this move recently. Maybe that could have helped in some of these battles that like he keeps on losing, especially this one where maybe if he dodged some hits and had a bit more stamina left, then maybe he just wins this battle. I saw a theory on Reddit somewhere for like an in-universe explanation where someone was thinking the exact same thing, and like someone's response is maybe he still uses that move. Maybe Striker is still fast, but the reason why like it looked so fast, it looked like it was teleporting and its speed was a big focus in Japan, was because like it was going way too fast for the weak Japanese competition. So like it appeared that way. It appeared like it was teleporting. Then when they got to the world stage, he's still going at the same speeds, but he's playing better competition. Like, his Striker isn't that special anymore. Like, that's why it doesn't look like it's teleporting anymore, because the world competition can actually keep up. I don't really know if I can buy a bag of what they're selling, as like he was teleporting against you and Jenga. Fresh, new, out of control Galaxy Pegasus Jenga, but like it was still very strong. So like I can't really buy a bag of that, but I like it more than the writers forgot or the writers nerfed him. But it was a good battle, a real heavyweight showdown where no one backed down, like just head-on attacks between the axe and the lance, going band for band, which was impressive that Masamune could take all of that. The only time that someone even thought about running away was when Klaus exceeded his limits and Striker used up all of its power to the point where like it just couldn't take another hit. However, I don't know how to feel about this, because Masamune pushing Klaus over his limits was framed as a positive. Like Sophie, Wales, and Klaus definitely respected him, and the fact that Klaus exceeded his limits means that he high diffed, extreme diffed Masamune. So like we get the idea that Masamune is probably a good bit stronger than Chiyun, like someone that Klaus didn't even break a sweat against, but Masamune still lost here. And like I'm just considering Masamune's record in 1v1s down the line. Like I already know about his whole entire record, so like is this a good thing? He won a battle, a team battle in the previous Wild Fang round, and he beat Chaoshin in China. So like you can't have him go around without winning a battle. Like that's fine. Just like Tsubasa and you have gone rounds without like either winning or competing. Like yeah, he doesn't have to win everything, but these 1v1 Ls are going to start racking up like crazy, which makes me question like would it have been better for Masamune's story to win here? Getting ahead of myself, spoiling that there will be a third battle, but like it kind of feels like he was the sacrifice and like just tossed aside because we have more important things to worry about, like Dark Tsubasa and like Julian, Jinga, and Ryuga storylines. So like you just needed Masamune to lose here to make those battles happen. Maybe you could have had you here in like the Klaus battle and lose, then have Masamune in the upcoming team battle with Tsubasa, but that doesn't work because Masamune usually leads off in the first battle and you and Tsubasa are always partners in team battles. So how about a tie? You get an intense battle that Masamune technically doesn't lose, so like you can feel good about that. Then the rest of the battles can play out normally. You still get those guaranteed 2 battles. The only thing you don't get is the pressure aspect of Gan Gan Galaxy trailing the series and like Julian versus Jinga being a winner takes all match, because instead of being tied in the series, Gan Gan Galaxy would be leading and Excalibur would be trying to push it to a 4th match. But they probably like wanted to save something as prestigious as a tie for Jinga versus Kyoya, because like it would probably lose its shock factor if it was used the round following on weaker bladers. So yeah, like I don't know, I understand why I'm like maybe they wouldn't want to tie them. Klaus's whole thing is about going past its limits, so like it's not necessarily a robbery, but like yeah, I just really don't know how to feel. Like I feel like Jinga, Tsubasa, and Masamune could have walked away with something in this round instead of Tsubasa and Jinga getting all of the shine. I would have made some changes, but like I still like this episode, and at least Masamune made somewhat of a friend as he and Klaus had mutual respect for each other going forward, and Masamune was even rooting for him in a later match. So yeah, I'll give this episode an A grade. Episode 28, Dark Eagle. This episode was all about Tsubasa trying to overcome the dark power in his and Yu's match against the twin jewels. It's like all of this time he's been trying to fight against the dark power instead of becoming one with it, like Ryuga suggested. And we get this nice little backstory of his childhood and how he got his ego and like how this kid cheated to beat him, but instead of fighting unfair, he fought fairly to win. This got him to defeat the dark power and come up with a new Shiny Tornado Buster special move that surprisingly just easily knocked out the Cetus Beyblades, meaning that right now he's really strong after overcoming that dark power. Then on the Jinga side of things, he didn't necessarily lose to Ryuga, as Ryuga called off the battle when he got his point across, but really Jinga kind of lost. Like he was never in a winning position because it was one-sided, and the purpose of that battle was for Ryuga to repay his debt and get Jinga to realize that he hasn't fully mastered his Galaxy Pegasus yet, which is why he would not beat Ryuga here and would not beat Julian in the next battle in this current unmastered state, which was important to Ryuga that Jinga beats Julian because there can only be one left rotating Beyblade. Julian's toy is not a real Beyblade to him. I'll give this episode an A. It was a well done episode. I really liked being able to explore more of Tsubasa's childhood, his past, and yeah, like it was really satisfying to see him overtake the dark power that's been a really big issue for him and everyone around him for the first half of this season. Even though I complained about bladers like Masamune and Yu getting shafted for it, I would say that I liked the storyline individually. That's not changing. I just wish that it didn't force Masamune and Yu to either like become weaker or lose just to highlight him. Like, couldn't there have been a way where they all got to shine a bit more? But yeah, like A tier episode. Moving on. Episode 29, Gravity Destroyer. It's the final battle of the A block finals between Jinga and Julian. It's a true back and forth battle where they both get to experience the upper hand at points in this battle. However, Because of Jenga's battle with Ryuga, he was able to unlock the true power of Pegasus, which was all in its rubber performance tip, making it such a fast Beyblade and able to soar into the galaxy for its new special move, Stardust Driver, that was able to defeat the Black Excalibur special move that Star Booster Attack wasn't able to. It's like it was beneficial for both Jenga and Ryuga because Jenga won the A block finals and Ryuga gets satisfaction because he can look down on Julian even more. Like, this guy is talking about left rotation, worry about being the best right rotating Beyblade first. He's not even in Ryuga conversations. You finally get to see the antagonist of the A block finals get dethroned after being on his high horse, literally like he rides horses. But yeah, this was a great battle, classic battle, visually pleasing battle, potentially a top 10 battle in Masters, which is why this episode gets an A grade. Not much more I can really say. Like, I suggest watching this peak for yourself. Episode 30, the Midday Street Battle. This is the start of the Brazil arc, the Garcia arc. Amazing, huh? Like, if you're watching this show, you're gonna be hearing that a lot. Anyways, while scouting the Brazilian team, there wasn't much to scout as like they weren't displaying their full team and they weren't going all out against the US team. This US team had Masamune's friend Zio on it, so this episode is kind of like a backdoor pilot to the next arc. But yeah, this strategy was implemented because the US team and the Brazilian team already made the B block finals. Like, they're already going to be in the finals tournament no matter what, competing against the A block winner and runner-up Team Excalibur and Team Gan Gan Galaxy. So if they have a free ticket to the finals tournament, why go all out and give your opponents good film on you, which is like some good strategy. Also, Kenta said that there was like a rumor going around about this match, so maybe the conspiracy is that in addition to the strategic benefits, the Brazilians were paid to throw this match, which I could probably buy a bag of that since we see the Garcias and Starbreaker working together in the final arc. But also, I have a question. We will later see that Starbreaker, the US team, got home court advantage against Excalibur, which makes sense as they won the B block finals and Excalibur lost the A block finals. Okay, so why are the Brazilians getting home court when they lost to Starbreaker and Gan Gan Galaxy beat Excalibur? Is there some other like grading system at play? Is it because they're trying to keep it close by keeping these matches in the Americas, South America, and the USA? There's quite a few things in Masters that make no sense, and this scouting session is one of them. It's plot hole central. Okay, so the Garcias only brought 3 as part of their master plan to get the upper hand and have that element of surprise. Fairs. But just because Gan Gan Galaxy didn't get to see Enzo in the footage, that doesn't mean that the Brazilian citizens didn't know about Enzo, as that's literally their home team. So because they knew about Enzo, they could have warned you about him before he got jumped. Next, they were complaining about the footage being bad quality, and like I said, Enzo wasn't in this fight, but are you telling me that's the only footage they could get on the Garcias? They made it all the way to the B block finals, which seems to be the weaker side of the bracket, but hey, like, they have some skills. So are you telling me that there's no reporting on a team that dominated all the way to the B block finals? Next, for the Americans. When they get to America, they're gonna act like they never seen the Americans before, except for Zio, but like, they saw them in this match. Now, they were not shown on the screen to us to keep them as a secret, but I would assume that they got to see the full picture, unless that was actually the full picture and like why Kenta said the footage was bad. But are you telling me that they caught Zio on camera, but they conveniently didn't catch Jack and Damien on camera, or like the footage was too bad to see them clearly? Plus, like I said, where's the other footage from the other rounds? So like, you could have just avoided this if you had them wearing disguises or like covering up their faces like Jack did later on. Next, later on, Jack says that his Beyblade isn't complete. I'm assuming that's the same deal for Damien, so who's even battling here? It can't be Zio battling everyone because he got his introduction in the third and clinching match against Ian, so like, he's not alone. Is it just some generic bladers from their academy holding it down until Jack and Damien's Beyblades get made, which seems unlikely because, like, as you're about to see later on, it's kind of tough to swap out members and get replacements, or probably the more likely scenario, Jack and Damien were just using like regular stock Beyblades, and like he was talking about his Befall not being complete. And between the B block finals where they beat the Garcias and the Excalibur semifinals coming up, he got his stock Beyblade that he was using like taken away, or like he decided not to use it while waiting for his Befall to get complete. It's possible because since the Garcias made the B block finals and I only have them above real bums like Shandora, Desert Blaze, and Lavushka, then that means that there's absolutely no comp in the B block, so they could possibly make it through with stock Beyblades. I went ahead in the story, but yeah, this stuff doesn't make a lot of sense, and I can see why in a guy named Kai's video, he said that the Garcias and the Starbreaker feel like separate entities that never existed in the World Tournament before we got to this arc. I guess it's because they're in the B block, most of the action takes place in the A block, so like they felt like they didn't have to go as in depth with their story. I don't know, but like, yeah, I'm ready to get back to the episode. Like, yeah, this stuff is kind of hard to wrap my brain around. Anyways, you saw the Brazilians were throwing games, but that's not all of the strategy that the Brazilians have up their sleeves. Enzo, the sub member that they were not aware of, caught you on the streets that they were told to stay out of and forced them into this unfair street battle where all of them, Enzo, Selene, and Ian, could jump him. Sure, they were holding back in the B block finals because like they were getting one tapped, but it seemed like they didn't even have that much to show anyways, as you was handling them until Argo showed up. And just like the Russian team, it seems like yes, everyone is cheating or like playing dirty. However, the leader slash manager figures, Anton and Argo, are the main ones behind this stuff really, while the others are sort of like apprehensive of the situation, but definitely not as much as the Russians. Like the whole family plays dirty to win for sure. Anyways, that's how this episode ends, with you getting jumped and getting his Libra damaged badly before the match, which again, in an episode where I've been critical and complained about a lot, I have to say, the moment that you realized that he was getting ganged up on, he should have recalled this Beyblade immediately. He didn't, because you need Gan Galaxy to be underpowered for this team, which you will see when they get to the battles. I'll give this episode a C. It's like, alright, there's a lot of weird plot stuff, but I like some of what was at play, like the mystery of this Zeo guy and like the change of pace. Sure, the Excalibur team was snobby and elitist, but they fought fair and square. No hat tricks, no theatrics, just like Wildfang. It's good that we're revisiting the idea of cheating and dirty play that we haven't really seen since the Russians. Differing styles gives more variety, more personality to these teams, which is something that I talked about earlier in the China arc. Like, yeah, it's nice to see different approaches to how Beyblade is played in different parts of the world, for better or for worse. Like, let me just see it. So it's an alright episode, but let's just wait for some more intense battles or like deep moments until we can start handing out B's and A's. Episode 31, The Brazilian Trap. In this episode, we get to see the long-term effects from the street battle, as Enzo was able to beat a weakened Yu in the first battle of this new formatted battle, sort of a continuous knockout battle, heightening the chances of all four bladers getting to battle, as there's no breaks. Like, you just launch your Beyblade in when your teammate gets defeated and the last one standing wins. You can't really feel bad for Gan Galaxy if they end up losing here, because like they contemplated calling the WBBA to get the Brazilians disqualified, so like they could have gone that route, but you wanted to battle so badly to get some payback that never actually came. And it seems like they didn't even have to agree to this knockout battle, knowing that you wasn't in good condition to battle, unless like the home court team gets the power in deciding the rules. So it seems like they're creating their own adversity here for the sake of plot and like entertainment, I would say. Speaking of adversity, something that always rubbed me the wrong way was when Enzo was talking about how Yu doesn't care about Beyblade, and since the Garcias are from the streets, they don't have much financially, so Beyblade is life for them. Okay, like yeah, it may be true that Yu probably lives a more privileged life than them, but everyone in the world championships had a tough road to get there, not just the Garcias. And like, just because they're impoverished, that doesn't inherently mean that their road was tougher. Like, remember when Masamune got hamburger napped? Remember the Dark Tsubasa plotline? And like, just think about Metal Fusion. Like, they had to deal with the El Drago crisis, so their road to get here wasn't like easy, I would say. Like, they had to go through hardships as well. That's something that rubbed me the wrong way, but I understand why they felt that way. And like, this is adding diversity. Like, all teams aren't going to battle the same. Like, they're fueled by different motives, which I absolutely said that I wanted to see, so I can't really complain too much. So maybe a non-issue, but something that really rubbed me the wrong way was Masamune getting dogged by Selene like that, falling for Tetsuya type tactics. At least he beat a weakened Enzo, so like at least he did something, but man, he's been such a liability as of late, especially in 1v1s, always putting them in a deficit when he lost to Nile, Klaus, and Selene, giving the Garcias a 2-1 lead in this battle when, I don't know, like this loss seems out of character. I thought that he learned how to be calm and channel all of his energy into one point in the China arc. I thought that he learned a bit of humility in the Wildfang arc, and I thought that he showed his strength in the Excalibur arc. I feel like he just shouldn't have lost here. He should not have lost to Selene like that. Masamune is a hothead. He is really spirited at times, but he was never dumb. He was never a flat out idiot like this battle regressed his character into, which is such a big fall off from the guy that stopped Jenga's special move against the Cheyenne so the Chinese team couldn't get more information. In that moment, his brain was functioning at a rate higher than everyone on his own team, including Madoka, like they were all confused. So yeah, hothead for sure, but they fried his brain in this battle. It kind of feels like the final fight of that Wildfang arc, where for that one specific fight, they nerfed Mystic Zone. But there, I understand why it was nerfed, because Gan Galaxy needed to win. But here, Masamune got nerfed for this one specific fight for no reason at all other than comedy, I guess. I feel like this specialized exclusive version of Masamune in this battle, like Selene fight Masamune, probably loses to everyone in the entire tournament. Of course, he's not beating Levushka because he's not going to figure out how to take down the cheating, but he's also not beating anyone on Desert Blaze and Shandora either. These are the 3 worst teams in the tournament that we got to see, and I have no confidence in Masamune to beat anyone on those teams. That's how badly they nerfed his character for this one battle. I feel like you could have had him fall for Selene's tricks a bit, but have him get back into the battle using everything that he learned and beat her, then go on as normal. In the early days, he was able to learn Jenga's strategy as the day went on, and Wang Huzhang talked about how Gan Galaxy were fast learners in the teamwork episode. Granted, that was through multiple battles, multiple hours, but also he was learning a new Galaxy Pegasus that no one has ever seen before, and he was learning 4,000-year-old Balin techniques, which were just way more complex than what Selene had going on with her rudimentary tactics. I feel like there was some setup for Masamune, like he could have learned and countered Selene's basic strategy, like that makes perfect sense for what he was set up to be, but unfortunately, that didn't happen. All of his good traits are gone. The speed boosting, like teleportation stuff, got left in the China arc, which by the way, in the following battle, we see that Selene likes to run away, so the teleportation stuff would have been the perfect counter. Like bro, I promise you, Masamune was built to beat Selene. For some reason, he lost that ability a while ago. It's like Striker's speed, its unique movement that was a big deal in the selection tournament arc, barely matters anymore, so his Beyblade and its abilities regress, and his character growth, like the technical, smarter, willing and eager to learn and like grow side of him, peaked in the Wildfang arc. It goes down as a missed opportunity where if Masamune won this, maybe his reputation would have been saved a bit, like he wouldn't be known as such a fraud. There's a lot of people that don't like this battle and this arc overall because of the plot contrivances, and I kind of have to agree, like I can definitely see their points. I talked about Desert Blaze, Shandora, and Levushka, which are the worst teams we've seen in the tournament. I believe that the Garcias are a tier above them. I don't think that they're better than Wildfang and Wang Huzhang. They ultimately lose, but I think it could be competitive because I think that the non-Argo Garcias, Benkei, Damare, Chaoshin, and Meimei are in a similar tier, but they're definitely getting smacked by Starbreaker, Gan Galaxy, and Excalibur, which Gan Galaxy just came off of beating Excalibur, so like they had to nerf them to bring them down to the Garcias level for a more even fight, because if not, you just kind of beat everyone except for Argo. It's like there's a bit to complain about in some of the fights, but like most of the world championships took place in a regular world. Then we get to the Garcia arc and they entered this like special bizarro Garcia world with different rules, different logic, different characterization that's only going to last for this arc. If you put any other team in this arc in the place of Gan Galaxy, the Garcias aren't probably going to win against the top teams, but because it's in their bizarro world that nerfs characters and ignores previously established characterization, they take everyone to the brink of elimination when we know that they're not actually like that good. The Garcias serve as a nerfing pad, like kind of reverse plot armor where they need some competition post the Excalibur highs, so we get this. I'm gonna give this episode an F. I already said why I don't like it, and especially with the out of nowhere Masamune regression, like yeah, this episode just wasn't good. It just doesn't work. Episode 32, the explosive Cyclone Battle. In this battle, we see the unsuccessful attempt to wear Pegasus down, or successful depending on how you look at it. Basically, Celine's job wasn't to be an actual battler, actual blader, it was to dodge attacks, stall the battle out, and drain Pegasus' strength, which happened, which is another plot inconsistency because we're just coming off a round where Pegasus was able to beat Destroyer because of its insane speed, which goes into the argument that the main characters were nerfed for the Garcia arc. This actually makes no sense at all. Anyways, after all of that dodging, Celine recalled her Beyblade when she thought that it was enough. Side note, like I really like her theme music, but yeah, apparently she's never been beaten by an opponent before, which isn't even true because in the scouting, we literally saw her lose to some Starbreaker guy. I thought that she meant that like she never lost in the Brazil stadium, but the Starbreaker battle was in Brazil. Like just look at the DJ. So not only is she lying, but even if she didn't technically get defeated by Digya here, she definitely lost her team a point. Also, I see no benefit to forfeiting before she loses, just so she can keep that fraudulent, not even real, undefeated title. Why not just weaken Pegasus even more, soften it up for Ian's Herculeo even more? Since Digya and Ian were at even strength for that battle, you can argue that Celine lost Ian the battle by not draining Pegasus even more, trying to keep that streak. Anyways, we get to this interesting strategic Cyclone battle where when it was Cyclone time, the disc in the middle would start spinning, and if you were in it, you could unleash a brutal attack, which is the strategy that Ian stuck to because he's the master of the Cyclone battle. However, maybe it wasn't the best thing, as because he's the master of the stadium, he knows how to stop Cyclone attacks like the one that Digya attempted. But because of that, he gave Digya the playbook on how to stop a Cyclone attack with an aerial attack, and just like that, Digya won 2 in a row, although I see no reason why Masamune couldn't have been the one to win 2 in a row. As I've explained in the previous episode, like it would have been the perfect opportunity for that. But like I said, they're giving everything to Digya and Tsubasa. I'll give this episode a C. It's definitely a step up from the previous episode, the abomination that it was. But ultimately, this episode was kind of whatever. There's still some glaring character derailments, but I like the strategy of the Cyclone battle, like for sure, that was interesting. And even if I debate the semantics of Celine's battling style, I get what she was going for, and like it was a good use of the format. So like you can see how this knockout battle format is coming into play, making it different from a normal battle. Episode 33. Charge, Ray Gill. I don't have a lot to say about this, but before I get to the battle, this was the iconic episode where Ryuga handspun his Medio El Drago and it actually stole spin, which works in real life. Now, I haven't seen it win a whole lot, like it usually stops like a second before the other Beyblade, but it's still cool. Anyways, the reason why Celine's strategy was a success and a failure is because she failed at softening up Digya for Ian. Maybe that was a missed opportunity. However, she and Ian got Digya so weak to the point that he got one-tapped by Argo, so maybe the strategy did work because now their leader is eliminated and they have to rely on Tsubasa. I wouldn't say that Tsubasa is a straight up liability, but he is sort of a wild card. Like, is the dark power like actually completely out of him? I don't know. That was a concept that was explored in this battle against Argo and his Ray Gil when he wanted to go dark mode to counteract Argo's darkness just like his old self, but his friends were able to keep him sane, which won him the match, ending the Garcia family's dream for this world championship cycle. As yeah, I know all of this wild card, consolation tournament, A block, B block stuff can be confusing, but they're out of the finals tournament while Gan Galaxy is going to the real finals to face Excalibur or the United States team that we don't really know anything about outside of Zio. And well, yeah, like he didn't reveal his name, but this episode started the Jack and Ryuga, like I wouldn't say rivalry, I would just say like whatever they had going on. I'll give this episode an A. This battle was very pleasing visually. I like the purple on purple, and while I would say that Argo was using underhanded tactics just like the other Garcias, attacking Digya when he wasn't ready, even though they agreed to that style of battle, and using broken pieces from the previous battle to attack Tsubasa, while he was using underhanded tactics, I felt like this was the closest to a true fight. It's like all of the other battles, there was some element of surprise or like cheap tactic that Gan Galaxy either struggled with or like had to learn or lost to, which happened in the Argo battle. However, the other Garcias relied so heavily on their gimmicks, like we already know they're weak. Meanwhile, for the most part, this battle felt like it was just based on strength because Argo isn't weak like the others. He is the leader after all, so he can rely a little bit more on brute force and the absolutely amazing attack power of Ray Gil. Man, I wish Striker could have been as formidable as Ray Gil, especially since they were talking about how good the Ray fusion wheel is, but like, yeah, that's not really working out for him. But yeah, I like the battle. I like that we get a full battle of purified Tsubasa where he didn't give in to the darkness, showing that he's here to stay and he's on the level of team leaders now. Like that's amazing. I think they wanted to make Masamune sort of a rival or like equal to Digya, but man, it's Tsubasa now clearly. He's actually the second in command. I always thought that he was better since the qualifying tournament since he got more points, but it's just so clear now and I'm happy for him that he overcame the darkness and was able to continue blading unlike others unfortunately in Hikaru. This Dark Tsubasa storyline was peak, so yeah, A tier episode. Moving on. Episode 34, the friend's name is Zio. This is the start of the USA arc or the Starbreaker arc, and they'll stay there for the remainder of the season. I think you can split it up a few ways where this is the USA / dungeon / HD Academy arc, then when Starbreaker starts battling, that's the Starbreaker arc, or like just include Starbreaker's first fight in the USA arc and create a separate arc for when, spoilers, they face Gan Galaxy. I'm just going to refer to it as one big arc until we get to a certain point. Anyways, in this episode, Masamune is back in America. It seems like he was born in Japan but trained a lot in America. In this episode, everyone takes a backseat as we learn about the Dungeon Gym and Masamune's friends Toby and Zio and how they used to Beyblade together. However, when Toby got sick one day, they basically wanted to carry on his legacy and their goal, which explains why Masamune departed for Japan after seeing Jinga's Battle Bladers match with Ryuga. Later, this will be seen as going rogue, like Assassin's Creed. Even though Zio did the same thing, he went rogue and built on the Dungeon Gym for HD Academy and didn't tell anyone where Toby was getting transferred to. I've got to say, before they met Zio, while looking for Toby, the nurse said that they didn't know what hospital Toby got moved to, so like, isn't that some type of negligence? Or like, when they get checked out of that hospital, they just cut ties? Doesn't paperwork have to be transferred over or something? Or like, is the previous hospital not responsible for that? I don't know, but it just seems like negligence, especially considering his serious illness. Like, hey, you gotta make sure he's safe, like wherever he's going, you know? Anyways, Masamune had a battle against Zio's new Flame Bixis, a tall Beyblade. They didn't finish the match, but Zio was a lot stronger than Masamune made him out to be, which added intrigue. Like, how could he have got so good, and like, how long has it been since Battle Bladers? Like 3 or so months based on vibes? The selection tournament arc doesn't seem to be too far removed from Battle Bladers, and we know that Masamune seemed to go to Japan right after Battle Bladers. Like, yeah, this is a small time frame that we're working with. Like, how did Zio get so strong when he was the weakest of the three in that like Battle Bladers type of time? And for more intrigue, why won't he forgive Masamune, eh? I'll give this episode a C. There's a lot of interesting aspects at play, like Masamune's childhood, Toby, Zio's Flame Bixis, and his grudge with Masamune, like HD Academy and such. Like, a lot of interesting stuff got an introduction in this episode, but there's little payoff and they like need to be explored more. This is why it's better to rank the show in arcs, because clearly this stuff needs more time to breathe and materialize. Like, it can't be done in one episode. But this is the episode that we got, which was alright, but ultimately left me with more questions than enjoyment, setting up the next episode rather than trying to be a spectacular episode itself. Episode 35, our slogan is #1. So this is basically an exclusive flashback episode, sort of like what they tried in Metal Fusion in the Forbidden Bay arc, showing how Doji and Ryuga stole El Drago. However, it seems like Masamune was much younger in this. Basically, it's showing how he's new to America and playing on American stereotypes, like how everything is bigger and the food is sweeter. But yeah, they showed the Masamune, Toby, and Zio backstory of how Masamune became a member at the Dungeon Gym, and they trained together and beat these bullies in a tournament and like vowed to become #1. It's their origin story. I'll give this episode a C and like say that it's a tough episode to grade. It gives some context, like you get to see firsthand that Zio was as bad as they say. You get to see that he's a liability, and you also get to see Masamune's experience in America and why Toby means so much to them, so that fills in quite a bit. However, the battles were kind of low leverage in this because like just about everyone was using a stock Beyblade. Like, these weren't the best battles, especially amid a world tournament where we're seeing like such high level battles every round. So like it sort of feels like this episode takes a step back, a necessary step back to fill in the details, but like still a step back. And I definitely remembered watching this live at the time and like kind of being underwhelmed. That's why I'll give this episode a C. It's an episode, alright, I'll say that. Episode 36, The Plot Thickens. This is another episode that sidelines Team Gangan Galaxy, this time all of them, including Masamune. It's sort of a Ryuga is him episode, and an episode focusing on the new big bads at HD Academy, where you finally get to learn a bit more about them. You see, Julian Concern and Excalibur, as you're about to learn, like yeah, they were the fake out antagonists of this season, while Dr. Ziggurat is more like it. He's the real deal. He gives off very strong Anton and mainly Doji vibes, having this like big headquarters and all, and creating Beyblades and giving bladers arrangements to draw out their hidden potential and use it to the fullest. Zio's just a guinea pig in this game, being one of the rare people that's compatible with the arrangement system, which is his end of the deal so Toby can get the elite care that HD Academy provides. Just like the moving from the other hospital stuff, is this even legal or moral? Like, it sounds like Ziggurat was going to shut off Toby's healthcare if Zio doesn't comply with his orders. Anyways, you see, the reason why Jack brought Ryuga to America was so that Ziggurat could learn everything about the ultimate reverse rotating Beyblade, as it could get in the way of their goal. He was able to get a lot of information. Like, I've got to say, it was smart putting El Drago up against Zio's Flame Bixes, which should be a direct counter to his medial El Drago, forcing him to draw out more power. However, since Zio didn't take the arrangement, he wasn't able to use his special move, which not only lost him this battle, but because El Drago didn't have to clash head on with a powerful special move, they didn't get the full power, which may be important later. Oh yeah, and Dr. Ziggurat basically asked Ryuga to like kind of be a guinea pig, like to be part of the research, which he definitely declined. And I absolutely love that evolution of Ryuga's character that honestly started in Fusion when he turned on Doji. I like the Shadow the Hedgehog of it all. Like, he's going on his own journey and you can't stop him. You can't entice him with anything because like he's already mastered his El Drago, and honestly like he's probably just the strongest blader at this point. So yeah, like he gets to create his own journey, his own pathway, and live like an untouchable god. He gets to walk around and act like he owns the world, even hand spinning his medial El Drago again in this episode. I'll give this episode a B. Like, I quite like it. The only reason why it's not getting an A is because maybe I wanted like a more competitive battle, but like it is nice to see Ryuga getting to battle more after being absent for a large portion of Metal Masters. Like I said, I like where they're taking his character, and yeah, like very nice to get much needed information on this Starbreaker HD Academy arrangement stuff. So yeah, like the stuff that was presented to us in the first episode of this arc is starting to add up, which again is why it's better to rate based on arcs. Like, I'm definitely considering making another video on that for sure. Since I started rating every episode, I want to see that through all the way to 0G, but like covering the show in arcs is definitely the way to go. But yeah, B tier episode. Moving on. Episode 37, The Compass of Fate. Fixes. It's continuing the HD Academy Starbreaker coming out party. Zio now having more power from the arrangement and now having a new blader on the scene, a member of Team Starbreaker, Damien. They were tasked with getting Ryuga back, which failed because bro didn't even have to like hand spin his Beyblade this time. He just showed it and like destroyed all of those generics. This episode is just kind of like what they've been building up to. Zio's mad at Masamune because he's a traitor. He went rogue by going to Japan to be #1 all by himself. Zio thought it was supposed to be more of a collaborative team thing, and after he left, Toby's condition got worse, so that's why he took the HD Academy gig. I'm gonna give this episode an F. Like, I just hate the illogical, conjured up drama. I'm completely on Masamune's side. Like, he didn't ditch Toby, or at least that wasn't the intention. He was just carrying on their dreams of being #1. Like, it didn't matter who became #1 as long as one person became #1. Like, it was a team win, and it seemed like Toby felt the same way because he was rooting for Masamune, and I kind of understand why he departed for Japan. Toby couldn't battle, he's out of commission, and comp wise, it looks like all of the comp is in Japan. Like, outside of Starbreaker and their fake bladers, there doesn't seem to be much in the States. So how's Masamune supposed to get stronger training with someone like Zio that wasn't really that good before the arrangements? This drama is so conjured up and illogical and makes me hate Zio. I kind of understand his side of the story and I think that he can be mad, but it's like he blamed Masamune for Toby getting worse when maybe, I guess like emotional support could be nice, but like that's kind of messed up. Why is Masamune supposed to halt his journey to be #1 to sit around waiting for Toby to get better when like I feel like that's counterintuitive to their mission statement? So I hated watching Digya and Masamune not lose, but like they were in a losing position against Zio. Then not necessarily mad about it, but remember the Garcia fight? Yu and Tsubasa's Beyblades got roughed up from that arc, so they spent all of this time repairing their Beyblades just for Damien and his Hades Kerbix to destroy their freshly repaired unstable Beyblades when they weren't even ready for battling. This episode really gets you to hate the US team, which maybe means that it should get an A, like it was successful with that. But my problem is with Zio's logic or lack thereof, which makes him so insufferable. Episode 38, The Wicked Peacock, Befall. With Yu and Tsubasa out of commission for the finals, the prospect of disqualifying Starbreaker got raised, but since Digya didn't want to win like that, the search began for a replacement member because like they just have to add more adversity, just like the Garcia round. Kind of unfortunate, but like that's it for Yu and Tsubasa in the World Championships. Yu didn't really make many waves. His only win was against Alexi, as even though he has 2 other wins, he did absolutely nothing in those battles and got carried by Tsubasa in those victories, which makes it unfortunate that Tsubasa won't be there to compete in the finals. Like with Masamune losing all the time, they really had to lean on Tsubasa. But yeah, I'll give this episode an A, despite it being Klaus getting dominated by Jack's evil Befall in the same type of fashion that Klaus dominated Chiyun, because Excalibur serves the same exact purpose as Wang Huzhong when Excalibur battled them. They're just there to get smacked in the face to show off how strong the bad guys are. I don't want to say low diff because Klaus was tanking a lot of hits, but like a mid diff might be giving Klaus too much credit because Jack wasn't phased by anything that Klaus has. So it's like somewhere between like a really drawn out high low diff. But I really love the final special move clash, so that earns this episode more points. I like this battle somewhat because Jack gives me ragey vibes with him cutting up Grand Capricorn, and it's like he wasn't battling to have a spirited battle, he was blading to create some art, which was fun. Like I kind of like the lack of care for the battle and like being more focused on the art but still winning in style. Also, speaking of ragey, in the final special move clash, they played Ragey's like torture Venom Strike music, just adding to the parallels. While not as sadistic, Jack's kind of like the spiritual successor to Ragey. Despite being a domination, Klaus didn't fold and exceeded his limits, and it was a fun battle, so like I'll give this episode an A. It was a fun episode. Episode 39, The Guard Dog of Hades, Kerbix. There's not much to say about this episode that hasn't already been said. It's infamous. Bet you already heard about it in one of those Beyblade was really that serious videos. You know how I've always been saying like some episodes are the this blader is him episode? Well, This episode is the Julian is not him episode. Basically, Damien challenged Julian to a best out of 3 series to not only get a guaranteed chance to get data on both Destroyer's right and left rotation, but also to test out the boost mode on his Hades Curvex that gives it insane defense. There's not really much to all of these battles, like Julian got low diff, Damien was never phased. In the first match, he incinerated his Destroyer in a fire pit, and in the second match, he took on Julian and the Twin Jewel special moves head on and took them to Hades. Like, Damien is him. Sure, this battle messes with the power scaling some because this is an even stronger Julian than the one that Jinga faced, so if Damien low diff a stronger Julian than the weaker one that Jinga high diff, then how are you going to expect Jinga to beat Damien then? Especially since, like, I don't think that he gained much strength from battling the Garcias, a weaker team than Excalibur. I will admit it ruins the power scaling some, but like, this stuff was so funny with the main antagonist of the first half, the main antagonist of the A block, just getting bodied and getting all of his memories burned up and like giving us a truly horrifying face saying that he's weak. Despite it being a domination, the battle looked really good visually and this episode was funny, so I'm gonna give it an A. Like, that's crazy, a gate to Hades. Episode 40, the Furious DJ Battle. Well, this is quite an episode. I already knew exactly what it was about and like I was contemplating giving it an F, but it's actually gonna get an A. This episode takes a break from the intensity of the World Tournament and it's all about laws. Like, they really cranked up the comedy for this one, especially with Mei just constantly saying things wrong, even more so in this episode. And like, that was just a very minor part of the comedy. You see, you had Kenta and the Chinese team all battling to be the replacement for Gan Galaxy, which I've got to ask, if someone from the Chinese team made it, wouldn't they be looked at as a traitor in China and to the Balin Temple? Anyways, while this entertaining free-for-all was going on, Mr. Phoenix broke through all of their special moves, which got me questioning, like, why isn't he competing? But Hikaru answered those questions as everyone there was disqualified from being the replacement. Phoenix wanted to join, but he was heavily involved with the tournament and an adult, so I guess guys like Anton and Ziggurat were strictly managerial and could never battle in the tournament, not even as a sub. And Wang Huzhong and Kenta couldn't join because they already participated in the tournament, which they count competing in the selection tournament as competing in the overall tournament. So now it makes sense why Benkei was the masked bull, but it opens up a plot hole. Like, how is Kyoya able to compete? I don't really see a good reason. So hey, like, Team Wildfang was an illegal team, and the thing is, it would have been a little bit more legal had Kyoya not entered the tournament just to show off to Jinga. Is he getting special privileges because he forfeited his spot rather than losing? So like, maybe he showed that he's worthy, like he showed that he should have been on a team anyways and already like technically earned a spot, so like they just allowed it. I don't know, but like, that's definitely a big plot hole. Anyways, then the second half of this episode was the fierce DJ battle. Like, they battled it all out to see which one was going to announce the finals, the American DJ or the Japanese DJ, which was so funny how everyone was acting because the DJs were acting like it was a fierce clash while everyone was talking about how lame the battle was. I thought I wasn't gonna like this episode because the battle was garbage, but the comedy absolutely carried this episode. Like, I haven't laughed this much at an episode since Kenta, Madoka, Kyoya, and Benkei were looking for Coma Village in Metal Fusion. So yeah, like, definitely an A tier episode. Episode 41, it's the final countdown. It's the Zio versus Masamune match that they were building up to that actually involved a fair bit of cheating. To break through Zio's Destiny Needle special move that was giving Masamune such a hard time, Madoka analyzed the Beyblade and decided that it would be best to attack from above, which I consider to be cheating, like whenever she whips out that laptop. Then, when Zio was getting beat by Masamune, he roided himself up to the 100% that he was struggling to get to for the past 2 episodes, which allowed him to use his Magnetic Needle Storm special move. And when he mentioned Toby possibly passing away if he lost, that got Masamune to cancel his special move and lose. And that's it for Masamune's World Championship journey. After claiming to be number 1 all of this time, sure, he had some wins, participated in some wins against Chao Shin, Kyoya and Nile, and a weakened Enzo, making him 3 and 4 overall, mid, but in traditional 1v1s, no team battle, no knockout battle. He was a very lackluster 1-3, losing to Niall, Klaus, and Zio, and having his only win be against Chao Shin in the very first arc of the World Championships. It's like that Charlie Brown football stuff. You get beatable opponents for Masamune and Klaus. I think Celine was beatable, then Zio, but no. Klaus and Zio are just a little bit better, passing out after they beat Masamune, showing that they were at or went past their limits to beat Masamune, and it was possible for Masamune to win. Like, they're not that much better than him, and they're teasing by having it be close just to take the football away in the end and rob him of a big moment. Man, like, I'll probably make a video on this later, but like, he probably could have been handled better. But like I said, he's always getting shafted for more important stuff like Dark Tsubasa or Jenga's battle against the leader. And like, you can't let Toby pass away here. So like, hey, I hear all of this talk about how you got robbed in Masters when Masamune probably got robbed just as much, which makes no sense because the reason why you gotta nerf you was in part to make space for Masamune. So considering his results in the World Championship, it just wasn't worth it. Anyways, I'll give this episode a C. Like, it was a fine episode, but nothing really special. Like, we've already heard about the Toby stuff so much to the point where like there's not much left to say, and like they're just bickering over the same stuff, and like the battle itself was okay, even if Masamune were able to win. Like, regardless, it was just an all right battle. The only thing that I really loved about this episode is at the tail end, when we're thinking about the Japanese team's replacement, they show Ryuga in sort of like a Sonic movie post-credit scene type of way. Like, they're advertising the character that's going to be in the next movie. So like, I quite like that. But yeah, C tier episode. Moving on. Episode 42, The Dragon Emperor Descends. Well, you know what it is. With Team Gang Gang Galaxy being very depleted, they have to rely on Ryuga back to settle the score with Jack, and they just had to like go along with it as they have a common goal. They both hate Starbreaker, and if they didn't accept, then Jenga would have to battle twice. Also, not that the replacement had to be Japanese, but Ryuga fits right in because he's Japanese, so like that makes it feel more personal, representing their country, fighting against Starbreaker together after being rivals, enemies in fusion, and maybe he would get some redemption for the El Drago crisis in the eyes of the Japanese people if he helped them win the World Championships. Also, side note, something that I'm not understanding is why did Hikaru's PTSD trigger? I understand why she got bent out of shape seeing Tsubasa's dark power because that's dark power. That's what we're led to believe that she's traumatized by. However, it triggered when Ryuga showed up, which doesn't make sense because now with Tsubasa purifying himself and Ryuga beating the dark power, there's no dark power left. All of that power is Medio El Drago's own power. So like, am I wrong? If Ryuga fused with the dark power, is that supposed to mean that like even though it's Medio's own power, it still has dark elements because it's not gone, it's just a fusion? Or is Hikaru possibly traumatized by the dark power and Ryuga? Just something that I wanted to touch on. Anyways, this was such a funny battle because Ryuga just let Jack beat up on him and carve this perfect picture just to get the tables completely turned on him so badly and get all of his spin strength stolen, and his befall was made the missing piece of his own peacock carving. I'm gonna give this episode an A just for that. I already knew the outcome of this battle. Maybe it's not one of the best battles ever because like of the one-sided nature, as they took turns dominating rather than having like a good competitive battle with counters and such, but it was so funny. So like, this episode is going to get an A. Episode 43, Spirit's Last Battle. This is yet another example of why it's better to rate the arcs rather than the individual episodes, as this is the final battle of the World Championship spanning across 2 episodes. So while the overall battle may or may not end up being worthy of an A, I would say that this episode doesn't get an A because we were left with this boring introductory half of the battle where Jenga's attacks just couldn't make a scratch on Copyrigh. Outside of that, what we were left with for most of this episode was the main gang finding out like sort of what we already knew, that Ziggurat is kind of cheating, but like, is he really cheating? Because that power that Zio, Jack, and Damien are displaying is power that's definitely in them for sure. Like, they can be that strong if they work for it. It's just that Ziggurat is speeding up the process with his science and like bringing that power to the surface instead of going through all of that rigorous training. I understand why it's murky because like that is their potential. Like, they have that inside of them, but I say that it's cheating because you have to work to achieve that. But yeah, this left everyone shocked because the new WBBA was trying to prevent these organizations from taking over Beyblade and leading bladers down a dark path, just for an organization with Dark Nebula ties to go unnoticed until their investigation and cause a lot of damage. I'll give this episode a C. It's not garbage, but it's kind of just sitting there explaining stuff that we could already piece together somewhat, then seeing Jenga get dominated. So there wasn't a ton to gain from this episode. So yeah, C tier episode. Moving on. Episode 44, Showdown, Jenga versus Damien. This is the much better second half of the battle, where instead of getting dominated, Jenga actually had counters for everything, like when he put out the Flames of Hades drive with Stormbringer, which I guess opens up another potential plot hole. I gave him a pass for not being able to use his old moves all of this time because Galaxy Pegasus is a new Beyblade, not an evolution, but apparently that didn't matter. So I'd say it's a plot hole if he always had access to it and just decided not to use it. This stuff could have been really helpful in the Kyoya battle to counter the reverse wind strike or all of his wind-based moves. But if he only unlocked it in this battle after saying that passionate speech and going through all of that adversity, then fairs, I guess. But I'll give this episode an A because I absolutely love the style of this battle. Instead of it being mostly a Beyblade battle, Curbix took them to Hades and they battled with their spirits or avatars of the Beyblades in a very hostile Hades environment where Jenga got chained up and he had to avoid flames and such. And the special move clash to end the battle was so intense. They definitely went all out for the finals of the World Tournament. I thought that I wasn't going to like it because I remembered it being kind of preachy, and while there were some moments when Jenga had to let Damien know that arrangement bladers are fake and they don't have the blader spirit from having intense battles with their friends, at least that stuff didn't overstay, and most of the focus was kept on this amazing battle, just amazing visually. And yeah, just like that, the final boss of the World Tournament goes down and Masamune can finally claim that he's #1, which was a great conclusion to the Starbreaker arc, potentially even a great conclusion to the season if they went that route. Episode 45, The Miraculous Spiral Core. This is the start of the Spiral Force, Spiral Core, Hades City, Flying City arc, where the beginning started out so funny and lighthearted, with Jenga and Masamune having a soda fight against Team Wang Huzhong. Also, silly question, but is Ryuga eligible for a championship ring? He only battled once, but hey, I don't think that Gangan Galaxy wins. If Jenga has to go through Jack, then he would be tired for Damien. Madoka got a medal without even battling, so send one of those Ryuga's way. Not saying that Madoka is completely useless and did nothing, she repairs the Beyblades and analyzes the Beyblades and comes up with strategies and such. She clearly has the blader spirit, but hey, would you consider Ryuga to be a world champion? Anyways, they were having fun until the boring part came when Ziggurat explained his true intentions, that he was not trying to win the world championships, rather he was trying to gather up research on all types of Beyblades to use in his Spiral Force experiment to use Beyblades as an energy source and sell it off to get rich. And his test for this was Toby, now Faust. As Ziggurat lived up to his deal, he cured Toby of his illness, but my guess is that there was nothing about this Faust stuff in the contracts. And now I kind of understand why Toby was the one to control this Twisted Tempo Beyblade, because unlike all of the other bad bladers that were recruited in Damien, Jack, and Zio, Toby was already good, as he seemed to be the best out of his friend group, which probably meant that he had a higher ceiling as a blader than all of the other Starbreaker guys. So really quick, this episode turned into a good versus evil battle where we have Starbreaker, the Garcias, and Julian versus what's left of Team Gangan Galaxy, Kenta, Team Wang Huzhong, and Wild Fang started trickling in as the battle started taking place, which is nice. I actually thought that they disbanded, but it was just Kyoya going off on a training arc, and now they're back to fight the good fight. It's just such a chaotic episode because you have a ton going on. Jenga, Jack, and Damien running through the streets battling and breaking through windows and seeing these nice team ups, and Nile blocking Black Excalibur and seeing Kyoya save Jenga from Hades Gate. I've always had my critiques with this arc, but I will say that it was fun seeing most of the teams that we met along the way pick a side in this fight and maybe they'll get a chance at redemption to avenge their loss in the World Championships. Of course, the Garcias were framed as evil, and since money was on the line, it was a no-brainer. Also, like I said, because of the collaboration here, they were probably paid off to throw the B block finals. Then you have the Chinese team here. Like, they've always been in Gan Galaxy's corner even before the China arc even began, and it seems like we were always getting to check in with them after every like arc or two, so like they were a no-brainer as well. Kyoya's there because he got weird vibes from Ryuga helping Jinga, and like we still don't know why Julian is there, which leaves some intrigue for the next episode. I'll give this episode a B only because the middle section dragged it down with some much needed exposition, but yeah, like it was kind of boring when compared to the lighthearted celebration and the intensity of the short battles at the end. Like, these weren't long enough battles to be anything really special, but they provided some good chaos. Episode 46, Charge, Hades City. This episode was all about charging towards Hades City, the center of Hades City, to try and stop the Spiral Force crisis. After meeting resistance from Ryu, Hikaru convinced him to let them go, and the rest of Excalibur joined the fight, on the good side. Before they could get to the city, they were ambushed by the Garcias and they were split up from each other. To make matters worse, the city started to fly. That put them on a serious timer to where they had to sacrifice some people, like make them stay behind so the others could get to the city. I would say that the people of most importance went. Madoka repaired Yu and Tsubasa's Beyblades just in time to save Jinga, so all of Team Gan Galaxy went. The twin Jules went over Klaus because we knew of them a good bit before Klaus, spent a bit more time with them, and they seem to be more important to Julian, and like they're just stronger as a team than Klaus individually. Kyoya and Deshayan left their entire teams behind, and unfortunately Hikaru got left behind, which was unfortunate because she battled in this episode. Like, finally, like hearing Aquario Infinite Assault was music to my ears. You know how much I like Hikaru, and it was good seeing her rise above her struggle and finally picking up a Beyblade again, but it's understandable why she was left behind, just not a relevant blader this season. I'm assuming she hasn't gotten any stronger, probably doesn't want to get too involved in another major crisis after what happened in Fusion. I'll give this episode an A, kind of continuing on what they built in the previous episode with the team ups and like everyone helping each other. I like the sacrifices that everyone made, like all of these characters that we grew to love throughout this story, sacrificing their spot in the big conflict to make sure their leader got there, which were emotional departures for sure, but it made the situation feel more serious, like everyone can't go. Episode 47, The Fallen Emperor. This episode is mostly a fight between Deshayan and Julian that I'm gonna go ahead and give an A to already. After Julian lost the World Championships, he lost everything. Dr. Ziggurat and Hades Inc. took over his businesses, and like he's only working with them to keep his name intact. So he's one of his 3 elites tasked with protecting Hades City and Tempo. After beating his friends, Sophie and Wales, this prompted a fight between Julian and Deshayan that not only looked good visually and was great to see, as this could have been a potential world championship match, but Deshayan's team let him down. So it was not only good visually, as it was a true, like serious heavyweight team leader battle, bringing out all of the stops, but I like the themes at play. Like, I like the themes that were touched on in this battle, from Deshayan giving out such an amazing speech, calling out Julian's treachery, talking about the contrasting ideologies of him. Deshayan, someone that put his whole life into Beyblade, while Julian only sees Beyblade as a tool to gain power and money, and like, just because you lose, it's not over for you. Like, you can always get back up and fight with honor, which is the lesson that Deshayan learned with his loss to Jinga, and it's the lesson that he's trying to teach Julian right now. Despite the loss to Deshayan, he eventually got back up and realized that he still had his friends, and he's going to start a new history for Team Excalibur, just like Deshayan and his friends started a new legacy, a new history for their generation of the Balin Temple. It's kind of a slept on aspect of Julian's character arc, because the body bag that Damien put him in was so tremendous, and like, you're kind of just in shock seeing this big antagonist getting taken out so easily and like crying when he finally started losing. So it can kind of overshadow this development that he's having right now. His character arc really came full circle in this Spiral Force arc, giving these extra sort of last few episodes at the end of this season more meaning, like giving us entertaining battles that we didn't get to see and completing character arcs like Julian's and Deshayan's. Like, it's well done, I've got to give it to him. Episode 48, The Falls Trap. Continuing the theme of giving us matchups that we never got, This time we got Tsubasa versus Jack, a battle that didn't happen because Yu and Tsubasa got jumped, so they were out of commission for the finals. Like, they didn't even know Jack, like they'd never seen him before, even though, going back to the Garcia scouting session rant, if they didn't see Jack in that battle, then who were they watching, or like, were the cameras really that bad? Oh yeah, and Yu got stuck in an arrangement pod. That was his final battle. He just flat out doesn't get a conclusive battle for Masters. Not in the finals, not in Hades City, which I just find hilarious. And it's like the latest example of how Masamune and Yu were shafted for Jinga and Tsubasa. I don't agree that Yu got nerfed terribly, maybe some, but Masters characters are just stronger. But it's like with him getting stuck here, they just showcased that they don't really care about the guy. Like, they never really had anything planned for him in Masters. Anyways, it was an alright battle. It's always funny to see Jack's artwork get messed up, but if the bar for an A tier episode is what Deshayan and Julian's battle looked like in the previous episode, then this was definitely a step below that, like, especially since these guys weren't team leaders. Definitely not a heavyweight showdown. The episode grade comes down to how good the battle was, since that consumed most of the episode, so like, it gets a B. An entertaining battle at points, another good worldview clash, a much needed battle to settle the score, but I've seen better as the previous episode set the bar so high. Episode 49, The Wild Beast Unleashed. It's the final mini-boss type of battle against Ziggurat's elites. It's another exclusive, another one of those like tying up loose ends type of battles that we never got between a roided up Damien fresh off an arrangement set to be stronger than Jinga, and he's facing Kyoya. It's not necessarily a battle that we were robbed of. Wildfang and Starbreaker never crossed paths in the World Tournament, but they set up Kyoya versus Damien at the beginning of this arc, and maybe this should have been a battle that happened in the World Championships, as Wildfang was absolutely a finals caliber team, probably a top 4 team off the strength of Kyoya and Nile. They just ran into Gan Gan Galaxy and got the tough side of the bracket, with Gan Gan Galaxy, Excalibur, and Wang Huzhang being in the A block, while the B block only really had the Garcias and Starbreaker. And I think that Wildfang is better than the Garcias, so like, there's a lot of scenarios where they'd qualify for the finals tournament in the B block. Anyways, I'm gonna give this episode an A for a similar reason why I gave Damien versus Jinga an A. They just went all out for this fight. I love how the battle was fought mostly with the avatars, and it was funny how after all of this time trying to get people to say that they're weak, Damien's Kerbix got scared of Leon, and the wildest part was how they were changing the scene. First, they were in Hades, then Kyoya took him to his world, the African wilderness, where survival is everything, making it yet another good worldview and ideology clash against someone in Kyoya, someone that was a gang leader and really had to get it out the mud, versus someone like Damien that was chosen for this arrangement, meaning that he's artificial and lacked the experience and grit and grind that Kyoya had. Of course, Kyoya won using his reverse wind strike that we haven't seen in a while. Like, man, this was such a creative battle. I like it more than Jinga's battle versus Damien. Also, just something to think about. When trying to counter the wind strike, Damien just said something like, "Go Kerbix," because like he couldn't use Hades Gate, his strongest move, because they're already in Hades. So did he nerf himself by going to Hades, or is he just getting like a power buff while in Hades to compensate for the fact that he can't use that special move? Just something to think about. But yeah, like, I like this episode, I like this fight. Moving on. Episode 50, Rampage. Tempo. The remaining bladers left that didn't stay behind trying to settle the score with someone, Jinga and Masamune, finally reached Faust and battled him. However, it wasn't going how they expected it to, as Twisted Tempo's spiral dimension like froze them. Like, it controls space and time. That is, until Ryuga used his El Drago to break through the black hole and get his revenge on Hades Inc., freeing Zio, freeing Jinga and Masamune from the spiral dimension, and weakening Tempo enough for it to be taken out by Jinga and Masamune. I'll give this episode a C. Like, I kind of don't like it that much, as it was mostly just Jinga and Masamune kind of just like talking. It wasn't that much of a battle, but I will say Ryuga destroying all of that stuff was fun to watch. It's an alright episode, but I think the more interesting conversation comes from who's better between Ryuga and Faust. Now that I've seen it, I kind of just want to talk about this one point. In these debates, I constantly see that Ryuga will win because he broke through the black hole spiral dimension. That's nice, but he broke through from the outside of the black hole. When you're inside the spiral dimension, you are literally frozen, and Twisted Tempo has full control over your Beyblade. It controls space and time. It's good if you still think that Ryuga beats Faust, like he has spin steal and reverse rotation after all. Maybe that can play a factor, but that's a point that I wanted to touch on. Like, it's not just as simple as Ryuga broke through the spiral dimension, so he's better, as that happened when he was outside of it. Maybe Jinga could break through it if he was outside of the spiral dimension, because it seems like if you're outside of it, then you're not affected by it. Kind of like how Zio broke into the spiral dimension in the episode following from the outside. But in a normal battle, Ryuga would be inside of it, where we saw Jinga and Masamune, and they were powerless inside, like they literally couldn't move. So yeah, I thought that debate was more interesting than the episode itself. C tier episode, moving on. Episode 51, Galaxy Heart, the finale. In this episode, Jinga tried to stop an energy reactor to prevent a world-ending meltdown, and Masamune and Zio tried to get Toby back. They were both successful, as Ryuga helped Jinga, kind of making it feel like Sonic Adventure 2, the Sonic and Shadow team up, and Masamune and Zio were successful, not through a battle really, but through getting to Toby on an emotional level and talking about memories, and like Masamune recapping his journey and growth, saying that it wouldn't be possible without Toby. They saved the day and formed Team Dungeon. I'll give this episode a C. I know that I've been giving out a lot of A's for some of these episodes and enjoyed the battles, like tying up those loose ends, completing character arcs and such, but with the sharp, drastic change of tone from a fun world championship to a world-ending threat, like, are you sure that I'm still watching the same season? Like, am I really still watching Metal Masters? I like a lot of what this arc gave me, but despite that, it's like, is this really the ending that this story needed, that a world championship story needed? Even if I tried to look at the ending on a deeper level with the Masamune stuff, I just didn't like it as much. Like, the final two episodes weren't their strongest. It's definitely not the final boss fight that I was kind of expecting for an episode of this caliber like Fusion had. It's definitely not the best final battle, despite maybe having more involvement from some of the other characters, unlike Fusion where it was just Jinga and Ryuga. Faust is a boring antagonist, a boring threat that was shoved in there at the end of the season, which is a reason why, despite the positives, the Hades City arc kind of feels like underdeveloped a bit, like a bit rushed, like kind of tacked on. The fight wasn't supposed to be epic, it was more so about showing off Masamune's character growth, which is good, but like not as the final fight of the season, when the three fights before this, the Cheyenne versus Julian, Tsubasa versus Jack, Damien versus Killia, were way better than the Faust fights. Jinga versus Damien felt way more like a final battle, which is why I'd say maybe the season should have ended at the World Tournament Finals. We wouldn't get the good of what this arc gave us, the heavyweight fights, wrapping up character arcs and such, but we wouldn't get the bad of what this arc gave us, which was a bad final antagonist that was worse than what we already got, making it feel sort of like tacked on and like the season already peaked or like had a natural end point at the World Championships, and maybe they could have woven these like 7 Spiral Force episodes into the story as something else, like maybe give Lavushka and like Desert Blaze and Shandora more development and involvement instead of having this epilogue arc of sorts. The problem is, like, the first half of this season is kind of a fake out. It feels like a genuine world championship season. Then about like over halfway through, they bring in this sci-fi plot that doesn't quite have enough time to build up. It feels like a separate season, and like I said, despite that, I like some of what it gave me. Just set it up better before over half of the season is already done with, so it can feel like it was actually meant to be there instead of a rushed epilogue tack on after the World Championships. Get this, in Metal Fusion, we got our first glimpse at Doji in episodes 2 and 3, early. We got our first Ryuga sightings in episodes 11 to 13, early. For the whole entire season, the Dark Nebula's presence is felt a lot, always seeming to run into them at tournaments. Meanwhile, in Metal Masters, we get our first glimpse at the American stuff, like in episode 30, when we see Zio over halfway through the season, and we can't get more until we finish off the Brazil stuff. I'd probably receive this stuff better if there were small incremental setups along the way, but because they didn't go that route, in ways it just feels like a bit disconnected from the first half of the season. I think that overall, Metal Masters was a good season, and like, while I can't give this episode an A, it's more so a journey over the destination type of thing, where this wasn't what I was hoping for, but like that doesn't erase everything. Like, it's an alright final episode. And that's every episode of Beyblade Metal Masters rated. I really enjoyed this season, and it definitely brought back some good memories, which I can't say for Fury, the season that I plan on talking about next. Not because it's bad, like I still have to rewatch it, but I flat out don't remember watching much of Fury as a kid. Like, I think I was growing out of Beyblade, so Metal Masters was the final season that I fully experienced and have nostalgia for. It was a good ride. It's not perfect, like this rewatch definitely exposed some not so good aspects and plot points that I wasn't privy to before, but the positives far outweigh the negatives. This was definitely better than Fusion. So yeah, that's all I got for now. Stay strong, stay brutal, because above all else, it's anything to win.
I won't let you down, Bruce. I'll keep fighting. Always.